So I'm going to reconvene our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, December the 6th. And for those of you joining us via YouTube, Council did have an in-camera session prior to this. And we were in camera because we were speaking of matters regarding identifiable persons. Staff was given direction on that matter, and they will proceed accordingly with that. When I opened up the meeting, before we went into in camera, I asked council if there was any disclosure of pecuniary interest. My colleagues all had none. I have one. Actually, well, it's for two items, items 12.4A and 17.2. And that is because I have a family member who has worked on that project. He's the engineer for the applicant developer. So at that time, when that comes up in the agenda, Deputy Mayor Manders will take the chair. So I think that it is safe to say that the holiday season has arrived in Lucan Biddulph. Things kicked off last week with Giving Tuesday on Tuesday, November the 30th, when Langford Lumber sold windshield cleaner, with all proceeds being directed to the Nicholas Smith Memorial Foundation. It was announced at the junior game on Saturday that Langford Lumber raised $1,500 for this great local cause. So we congratulate everyone involved in that and thank everybody who purchased windshield wiper fluid that day. Friday marked the lighting of the lights in Market Street Park. The weather was perfect and the lights went on without a hitch. There was a bit of a crowd and all the kiddies that were there were excited by the park's transformation. And I want to thank the Lions Club for their most recent investment in the park and in the additions to what you can see when you go through the park. I want to thank Lisa and the Public Works Department and the Parks Department for their help with the setting up of the park and all the lights and testing it all out. I do have to make special mention to Andrew Christie. Andrew fabricated a new element in the park, and I have to say it was a big hit. If you haven't seen the park, please take the time to visit during the holiday season. I believe the lights will be lit until into January. Saturday, of course, meant the return of the Santa Claus parade and the big man himself. The weather was certainly frightful in the morning, but by parade time it had cleared. It was cold, but I think that we were all thankful that that was what we had to deal with. I'm not sure what the final tally was for the floats, but participation seemed to be back to pre-pandemic level. The streets were full and anyone I spoke to was so excited for the return of the parade. And I want to acknowledge our staff who took on the organization this year of the parade. It was all hands on deck for traffic and crowd control and float management. Maggie Smith and Lisa DeBoer need a special congratulations as they took on parade administration and logistics. I would also like to take this opportunity to celebrate the Lucan Area Heritage Society and Museum Group. They brought the Montreal Canadiens Alumni Association to play Irish players who had played for various hockey associations in our community. And of course, that happened on Friday night. The stands were filled and everyone in attendance had a great time. It was quite an undertaking and the organization needs to be congratulated for bringing the alumni to town to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the famous Irish-Canadian game. I do need to switch gears because today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. And we observe this day each year to remember the École Polytech massacre. It was 33 years ago today that 14 women were targeted and murdered for being just that, women. I'm sure you have all taken a few moments to remember these women today. Can you imagine what they could have accomplished had their lives not been taken? We must ask ourselves, could that still happen today? What more can we do as individuals, as society, or as a society to end gender-based violence, harassment, and misogyny? This tragedy reminds us that women continue to be the main victims of violence. We must continue to fight against hatred and violence in all forms, and we must educate our children to build a culture of respect. When we see unacceptable behavior, we must speak out and denounce it. In my municipal work, while I am very fortunate to be surrounded by incredible colleagues, there are still tables I am at where I know that my voice is dismissed and that I am still not seen as an equal or deserving of being there. We must work every day to ensure this tragedy is one that we learn from. On this day of remembrance, we must continue to honor these women by doing our part to ensure these women did not have to die in vain. Okay, we do have to go into a planning meeting and sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn our regular meeting to move into that meeting of the Committee of Adjustment at 6:15. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. So we're sitting as a Committee of Adjustment. We have a number of applications in front of us. The first one is a consent application, and it's with regards to a property on Mitchell Line. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dan to take us through it.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the committee. So this first application, item 6.1 on the agenda before the committee tonight, is with respect to consent B10 and B11 2022. So just as a refresher, this was originally heard by council on October 18th. Through that meeting and through the consent files, the applicant is seeking permission to reestablish 3 separate farm parcels that are used primarily for agricultural purposes, which did merge on title due to common ownership between the 3 parcels. The applicant was referred back to staff at the October 18th meeting based on comments that we did receive from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. We have since engaged with Upper Thames, the Conservation Authority, with respect to their comments on the fragmentization of hazard lands. The original comment that was issued to us was that they did not support any fragmentation of that land, being the municipal drain that cuts across the property. However, it was noted that their own internal policies do potentially permit such fragmentation only in such instances that it clearly would make sense in an agricultural setting. So in this case, I did have further conversations with them, with the planner on staff and the regulatory staff members, and it was agreed that as long as the applicant did move the severance line to the top of bank, or what we're referring to as the edge of cultivation on part 1, the Conservation Authority would be okay with the severance, and that is ideal for us as well, because it doesn't basically place a portion of land on one side of the municipal drain that's not accessible to the other side. So in this case, we don't lose any net agricultural land through land cultivation. So I would note that I did receive a response from the applicant today that they were agreeable to the terms as established with the Conservation Authority to establish that line or the severance line as the edge of cultivation on the edge of part 1, which is shown on the attached reference plan. So as a condition requiring the drain, as a condition, we have included that the drain remain on one side of the property between part 1 and part 2. It is acknowledged that the drain will still continue to bisect part 3. However, there is an existing access that provides agricultural access to the back of the property across the existing drain. So given that, I am recommending approval of the consent files, subject to the conditions that are listed in the planner's report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. And I think that there was one condition that had been added after it had the after the report had been published, right? And that's what is our now number 5, and that has to do with the what's required under the Drainage Act, all that stuff, right? Okay, I know that the applicant's counsel has joined us, and I didn't know if they had anything to add at this point before I open it up to the committee for questions.
Hi, my name is Courtney Sinclair. I'm speaking on behalf of Joe. We have no concerns with the recommendations or conditions, and we're open to any questions you have.
Okay, thank you for that, Courtney. Okay, any comments or questions from the committee? Deputy Mayor Manders?
No, just a, just a comment. Yeah, just that, again, we talked at this at length at the last meeting, and I'm glad to see that staff was able to work with Upper Thames to have them satisfied with the severance. So we, again, yeah, I'm glad to see that, and that's what we were waiting for. And no, I definitely am in support of it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just with respect to the comment that was received from the member of the public, Mr. Thomas, related to his concerns around the proposed severances and how it would permit the owner to construct a dwelling on each lot created. Can you just comment on that, Dan? Is that permitted that each of these separate lots can now construct dwellings, and would that potentially impact a neighboring property's ability to construct a barn for livestock purposes?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So you are correct in that by resevering the properties into which is currently 1 agricultural parcel under the A1 zone to 3 agricultural parcels under the A1 zone, each one of those A1 zones would permit a single detached dwelling to be established on the lots. I would note those conditions did previously exist prior to those parcels amalgamating on title as based on a technicality. So it would be possible to establish a farm residence on those parcels, which is subsidiary to the farm operation. In terms of the neighboring property and whether or not those homes would impact their ability to construct a livestock facility. So their ability to construct a livestock facility would be solely dependent off of their MDS or minimum distance separation calculations to a dwelling on an adjacent property. In this case, the lot in question by the neighbor has a severed residence on that property, which would limit their ability to establish a livestock facility on their own parcel. So any home that could be established as part of an A1 zone on one of these properties or parcels would not limit them beyond what they're already limited to based on the existing severance on his lot. So in terms of his, it wouldn't impact his ability to establish a livestock facility any more than his current situation already does.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee? I know we've got a member of the public that has joined us. I didn't know if he was here to make a public comment on this application. Okay. Okay. We do have a recommended motion in front of us, and it is fairly lengthy. There are 9 conditions under the motion. I'll read the motion. I'm not going to read the conditions because, as I say, it's quite lengthy. Anybody watching us can certainly find the conditions on the motion online on our agenda. So the recommended motion is that applications for consent B10-2022 and B11-2022 requested by Joseph Hentz, care of learners, on behalf of 1879517 Ontario Limited, to sever 2 vacant agricultural parcels. The first with an area of approximately 39.38 hectares, maintaining a broken frontage of approximately 348.4 meters along Stonehouse Line. And the second, an area of approximately 42.19 hectares and a broken frontage of approximately 360.8 meters on Stonehouse Line. And the retained parcel with an area of approximately 41.7 hectares, maintaining a frontage of 408.12 meters on Mitchell Line from a property legally described as parts of lots 31 and 32 concession 9 and part of 31 concession 10 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, county of Middlesex, be granted. And again, that's subject to the 9 conditions attached to it, and of the reasoning can be found within that motion online. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay. So the next one in front of us, again, is a consent application. This has to do with the Asabo Fields subdivision. And again, Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor. And just for point of clarification, the planning report that was uploaded to the council agenda online speaks to items 6.2 and 6.3 concurrently, as they are concurrent applications. So one consent and one zoning bylaw amendment, and they both apply to the same parcel of land. So with that said, if it's okay, I'm just going to present them together and then you can vote on them separately. So with that said, consent file B13/2022 is a request to sever off a 0.43 acre parcel of land from an approved block in a plan of subdivision. The purpose is to permit the applicant generally to sell the units as freehold townhouse dwellings, separate of a future condominium site, which is located directly behind this parcel. The site is located in the Asabo Fields subdivision, which is on the west side of Lucan, south of the community center. It's accessed by Scotts Drive and Elizabeth Street. The site is adjacent industrial uses to the south, residential uses to the east, the community center to the north, and agricultural lands to the west. It is designated settlement area in the county official plan, residential in the township official plan, and is zoned a site-specific residential third density exception, R311, H3 holding zone. So in addition to the proposed consent application, the developer has also submitted a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application, and that being application number ZBA 7/2022, which again is listed as item 6.3 on tonight's council agenda package. And this seeks to permit 2 separate parcels of land with a consistent zone that's applied across all parcels as one. And the effect of the application would be to ensure zoning compliance would be maintained should the site be separated into 2 or more parcels under different distinct ownerships. So the addition of the site-specific special provision in this case is necessary, as the existing zoning provisions were applied to the site as a whole, as if it was one parcel. Removing this portion of land from the zone will create non-compliance for the future development of the lands, as was originally contemplated by council. And so as indicated in the planning report, the consent to sever and concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application are necessary based on the developer's preferred form of construction, that being street fronting townhomes on Scotts Drive. And generally, planning does support the implementation of street fronting townhomes as a different or providing different flexible option for future home purchasers to have additional housing stock options that are available in Lucan. So as the result of development at the end of the day, it does achieve the same number of units and the same format of development as originally contemplated. However, it just changes the type of tenure and ownership of the units. I am of the opinion that the proposed consent and concurrent zoning bylaw amendment are considered appropriate, and they do meet the intent of the PPS county official plan and the township official plan. And as such, I am recommending approval, subject to the conditions that are listed in the consent decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. We do have the applicant online with us. Mr. Van Giel, did you have anything that you wanted to comment before I opened it up to the committee for questions?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everybody. At this point, I have no additional comments. I think Dan summarized very nicely what it is we're trying to achieve with this application, and I am in support of his recommendation. So no additional comments for me at this time, but I am available for any questions should there be any.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions or comments from the committee? Deputy Mayor Manders.
What are the expectations from staff then? And I don't understand it enough, but it's part of this is the bill 23 when it comes to our DC charges. Will it be, is it still what it is, or has that taken effect yet? For this application, in particular?
Yeah, so through the chair, so DC charges are only charged at time of building permit issuance.
Mhm.
So it would only, so whatever the DC bylaw that's in effect at that point in time, that's what the charge would be for the establishment of said building unit. So in the case of whether it's, say it's a condo or it's a freehold unit, the charge is based on the physical unit, not on ownership or tenureship or separate lots. So, and at the end of the day, the charge would be the same, regardless of it being a separate unit on a separate block or a separate ownership or one entire block with a bunch of units on it. Your question in terms of Bill 23, it doesn't really come into force and effect for us to consider until the new DC bylaw is passed. So under Bill 23, we can only, or the township can only charge 80% of that finalized fee in the first year. So that will have an effect on any future development moving forward once that DC bylaw comes into force and effect.
When is that, or when are we expected to do that? Just ballpark. Just curious.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me, that was a question I did ask, posed to the consultant, BMRS, and their answer was Bill 23 has certainly thrown a curve into this whole thing because the some of the charges or some of the provisions in that are backdated to January 1st of 2022. So they are trying to dissect what that physically means to the development charge process. Regardless, we have to have the background study published 60 days prior to I believe it's the public meeting for the development charges. So we're still, we're still a ways out there, but they are trying to figure out how we can do this and under the changed legislation.
Gotcha.
Because there's a number of substantial changes in there that affect us financially.
Mhm. More one about the DC. Okay, so that I'll have another question for Dan later on it. Okay, thanks. Thank you. That's all for this application.
Any questions on this application? Councillor Hodgins?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Dan, I think you answered my question in your report and in your speech on this, but I had a question about the how that consistency and compatibility with the rear block would be maintained. You said it would be the same format and it's just different tenure of ownership, but I guess how is that controlled, or how is that going to be ensured? Like those, whoever buys that or gets the new ownership, aren't they able to sort of build whatever they want, or how do we control that?
So through the chair, so I'm just trying to dissect what you said at the end there. In terms of build whatever they want. No, you can't build whatever you want. It's subject to zoning. But so, yeah, that was kind of one of the questions we had contemplated with the applicants and their legal counsel in this case. Because we didn't want to get ourselves in a position where, we have a condo site with private agreements with individual unit owners from street fronting towns. And what I would say is that like this particular format of development is not a unique format of development. It occurs quite frequently and more so in situations where the townhome directly fronts onto an actual municipal street. So in this case, these units front onto the actual Scotts Drive as the municipal street, meaning that they have public road access, whereas all the units behind them will not. They'll front onto their own private road. So the only thing that we need to consider as part of a more comprehensive development, more so on the block on the back, not on this block, is that there's easements in place for things such as stormwater management controls to make sure that each site is managing their own stormwater appropriately. And we did, the applicant did provide us with an initial stormwater management review report, which shows that as a separate block, the existing infrastructure along Scotts Drive is capable of handling that storm flow. And then the subsequent development of a condominium, a townhouse condominium to the rear, will be required to basically control their own stormwater management on site. So just like any standard, even in your standard subdivisions where single family homes are allotted up against each other, each one has to deal with their own stormwater management based on an overall designed plan. So it'll be the same thing in this scenario between a condo and individual landowners.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? And again, I'll ask, does anybody from the public want to speak to this application? We can ask that. I'm just going to get you to stand up. I just need your name, your full name, for the record. Okay. Mhm. Okay, all right. I don't know whether, Matt, whether you heard that or not, but if Dan can answer that, I think on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, through the chairs, to the member of the public. So the site that is being discussed right now, which is the consent site, is conceptually designed for 9 street fronting townhouse units.
Did you have anything, any other questions? Okay, thanks. Okay, if there's no other questions or discussion on this, we do have a recommended motion, and like the one before it, there are a number of conditions on it. There's 7. So once again, I'll remind anybody watching that they can refer to our written agenda online to look at those conditions, and the reasons behind the motion. I just might add that number 7, and that has to do with the agreement with the County of Middlesex and Township of Lucan Biddulph. It should read Scotts Drive and not Queen Street, because we had changed the name a couple of meetings ago on that one. So the recommended motion in front of us is that application for consent B-13-2022 requested by Christine Trayer on behalf of 1525020 Ontario Inc. to sever a vacant parcel with a frontage of approximately 68.49 meters along the extension of Scotts Drive and an area of approximately 1,754.71 square meters, and the retained parcel with an area of approximately 1.74 hectares from a property legally described as Plan 350 Lot 15, Part Lots 14 and 16 SLR, Part Lot 4RP 33R20612, Part 2 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex be granted, subject to the following 7 conditions. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Now I need a motion for us to rise out of the committee of adjustment and move into a public meeting, and this will happen at 6:39. PM. A mover and a seconder for that. Counselor Westman, Counselor Regan, all in favor? And that's carried. So we've got a motion in front of us, and this is the one that goes, is the, I guess, the sister one. It has the zoning bylaw amendment attached to the application that Dan just walked us through. So with that, the motion in front of us is that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z-2-2022 for lands owned by 1525020 Ontario Inc. and legally described as Plan 350, Lot 15, Part Lots 14 and 16 SLR, Part Lot 4 RP, 33R 20612 Part 2 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, being located north of William Street on the west side of Scotts Drive, be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to the Township Council for consideration once a deposited reference plan has been provided to the satisfaction of the township. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Counselor Westman and Counselor Hodgins, all in favor? And that is carried. So now we'll move on to 6.4, which is a planning report with regards to an official plan amendment number 11. And joining us to take us through this is Abby Heddle. And we've met her before through other applications in front of us. And Abby is a planner with the County of Middlesex. So she's joined us. I'll get her to unmute and I'll turn it over to you. Thanks very much, Abby.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this housekeeping amendment is to update the township's official plan to implement up-to-date policies as a result of recent legislative changes. The effect of this housekeeping amendment is to implement and update complete application requirements for certain Planning Act applications as outlined in my report. Further, this housekeeping amendment would provide policy direction that would allow council to delegate the passing of minor zoning bylaw amendments to a municipal committee, officer, employee, or agent, and provide policy direction as it relates to requests for the cancellation of a certificate of consent. So these amendments are a result of recent updates to the Planning Act through Bill 13, the Supporting People and Supporting Businesses Act, Bill 276, Supporting Recovery and Competitiveness Act, and Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act. So Bill 109 made several amendments to the Planning Act, which focus on streamlining the municipal decision-making process, including imposing the requirement starting January 1st, 2023, to refund certain planning application fees where decision timelines are not achieved in a timely manner. A significant change within Bill 109 is how site plan control is implemented. As council may recall, all municipal councils were required to delegate site plan control decisions to staff for all applications received on or after July 1st of this year. The site plan application decision-making timeline as of January 1st, 2023 will be extended from the current 30-day timeline to a 60-day timeline, which means that an applicant can appeal a municipality's failure to approve their site plan application to the OLT beginning 60 days after the application was deemed complete. Another change that was implemented through Bill 109 is that the Act now provides for the inclusion of complete application requirements within official plans for site plan applications, similar to current complete application requirements for other types of applications under the Act. A landowner has recourse if the municipality fails to deem an application for site plan approval complete within 30 days of it being submitted, unless the official plan contains prescribed information and material that could be required as part of a complete application for site plan approval. And this essentially provides the township with the opportunity to pause the clock in the absence of any required materials. So the basic provisions of complete application requirements for site plans are included in Section 41 of the Planning Act, as outlined in my report. However, for the majority of site plan applications, municipalities generally require additional information and reports or studies that address matters including but not limited to grading, traffic studies, noise and vibration studies, as well as servicing studies. Staff are therefore recommending the addition of a new section in the township's official plan containing complete application requirements that address the following: planning matters, environmental and natural matters, transportation matters, servicing and infrastructure matters, financial and market impact assessment matters, urban design and cultural matters, nuisance and hazard matters, as well as the requirement for peer review at the applicant's expense where applicable. So in addition to the legislative changes that were implemented through Bill 109, Bill 13 and Bill 276 made minor amendments to the Planning Act. More specifically, Schedule 19 of Bill 13 amended the Planning Act to include provisions that enables council to, by bylaw, delegate the authority to pass bylaws under Section 34 of the Planning Act, being zoning bylaws, that are minor in nature, to a committee of council or an individual who is an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality. These bylaws include removing holding symbols, as well as passing temporary use bylaws. In order for council to delegate this authority to pass bylaws on these matters, the Act requires that the official plan provide policies to specify the types of bylaws that may be delegated. I would note that the delegation of this authority is completely discretionary, and it would require council to subsequently pass a bylaw that would delegate this approval authority to staff. So finally, Schedule 24 of Bill 276 amended the Planning Act to, among other matters, allow for the cancellation of a certificate of consent. And while this is not a requirement of the Act, the addition of a policy that outlines requirements to cancel a consent would greatly assist staff in the evaluation of any requests to do so. So in all, the purpose of this amendment is to implement the provisions of the Planning Act associated with Bill 109, Bill 13, and Bill 276 within the township's official plan. This amendment will conform to recent changes to the Planning Act and provide clarity as it relates to complete application requirements for certain applications made under the Planning Act, the delegation of authority to pass bylaws under Section 34 of the Act that are minor in nature, and the evaluation of requests to cancel a certificate of consent, which will ultimately improve the development application processes by the township. So there were no agency or public comments received prior to the preparation of my report. And so based on the foregoing, it is my recommendation, Your Honor, that official plan amendment number 11 to implement policies as a result of legislative changes to the Planning Act be adopted and forwarded to the County of Middlesex for consideration of approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Questions or comment from council on this? Deputy or Councillor Regan, sorry, almost gave you a promotion there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to be clear, perhaps Ron could help, or it's maybe Dan or so just really what this says is that council no longer has control over site plan. Is that what this says? That we don't have control over, like, we basically don't get to say what it looks like. It's coming from staff. Sorry, it's going to come from staff and I trust staff, but that just means that we don't have any control over that. Dan?
Through the chair to Councillor Reagan. So I wouldn't say you have no control over it. And what I mean by that is, yes, the province required municipal authorities to delegate site plan approval to an officer of the municipality. But really, the site plan process is a technical process. That is the implementation of this approved zoning of the site. So what I would say is council's review of that process happens when zoning gets passed at the public meeting, not at the technical review stage. So yes, the province took away your authority to physically approve that site plan, but really the public process that establishes the permissions to establish a future development, you still have that authority to approve that. So yes and no.
Kind of, sort of, maybe, but not really. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
If I recall correctly, the site plan approval was never a public process anyways.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. Site plan approval is not a public process. It's never been under section 41 of the Planning Act. It was just something that was ratified by council to enter into an agreement.
So any of those public concerns about what the site would look at, as you say, would happen at that zoning public meeting. Did you have follow-up, Councillor Reagan? Okay. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question to Abby or Dan is with respect to the timelines for this amendment and when it will be in force. In June of this year, we submitted our official plan amendment number 10, and my understanding is that that one is still not in force yet. It still has to go through county and maybe ministry as well. So I just want to better understand how long this is going to take to go through to be approved and when it's going to be in effect.
Yeah, through the chair, maybe I'll take that one. So yeah, this is these particular housekeeping amendments that the county is bringing to all the local municipal authorities is kind of a very time sensitive document or a policy amendment because it's directly dealing with the changes that the province initiated through Bill 109. So in order to make sure that we have the appropriate policy in place to say yes or no, we think this is good or we don't think this is good. That's something that we're prioritizing at the county to get that information into local official plans so that we could refuse applications. Whereas right now, we really don't have any authority to refuse an application as complete based on the current policies in Lucan Biddulph's official plan. So in terms of timelines, this, again, I would have to speak to my boss, but this will be a priority going to council as soon as possible, likely the first meeting in January.
Follow up to that, could this, I guess, OPA number 11 potentially like leapfrog our number 10? Or do we have to do 10 and then 11? Or is there any update on how number 10 is coming along?
So through the chair, we had to be very careful when we looked at these general amendments to the official plans to make sure that we weren't impacting those original official plan amendments passed by all the local councils. So this particular amendment doesn't in any way change anything that was originally adopted by local council with OPA 10, your comprehensive or municipal comprehensive review. But yes, it's like in terms of like process and procedure, OPA 10 does not need to be adopted for this to be adopted. One is not contingent on the other.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just when this is adopted, Dan, do you see any timelines yourself previous to this, to this being adopted, just timelines that concern you on any of this or no? Like a lot was said, but does any of this concern you after it's adopted or no?
Through the chair, sorry, what do you mean?
Like just the changes and then, you know, all these changes, is any of this a concern of yours from a planner?
Through the chair, do you mean changes based on this OPA or changes in a more broader sense from?
Well, a broader sense than what was just presented, both. Yeah.
Well, through the chair, certainly our upper authorities have a mandate in place that, and they want to make sure that they're achieving that certain mandate. So these policies or regulatory changes that have been introduced are aimed at achieving, in the provincial opinion, those objectives that they're trying to. So I don't like, based on OPA 11 before you tonight, I think these are good things to have in your official plan because it provides staff with direction as to what we would like to see to evaluate good planning applications, especially when it comes to, situations of site plan control where there's a number of factors that we need to consider beyond just your standard zoning. There's a lot of engineering considerations, there's natural heritage considerations, environmental considerations, noise, dust, odor, everything. This will give us the ability to require those documents as part of a complete application. So from our perspective, we could just physically refuse to accept applications until all of those documents have been provided to us. So I think that's a good thing at the end of the day.
Right. Yep, sure. Follow up, Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Yeah, just one thing came to mind. So this OPA covers Bill 13, Bill 276, Bill 109. Bill 23 is obviously top of mind right now. It's not included within this. So can we anticipate that we may be seeing OPA number 12 coming in the near future with these, with all the concerns that are coming up with Bill 23?
Through the chair, does my colleague want to
I
comment on
was
that
going
one?
to say, did Abby want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, so staff at the county are still kind of in the process of digesting Bill 23 because it was quite large. And we're still missing several implementing regulations that will provide us with a little bit more direction as to how we need to proceed from both a procedural perspective as well as a policy perspective. I can advise that there is going to be a council presentation on Bill 23 at the December 13th County Council meeting. And it provides a lot of really good information as a starting point.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Abby. Okay, one last call to council for questions. Any comment from the public on the OPA amendment? Okay, so with that, we have a motion in front of us that official plan amendment number 11 to implement policies as a result of legislative changes to the Planning Act be adopted and forwarded to the County of Middlesex for consideration of approval. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thanks, Abby, for joining us. And we're done with Dan for the moment. I think he makes an appearance later on. We'll move now into our scheduled meeting that was supposed to be at 6:30 for the meeting with regards to proposed water and sewer rates for 2023. We don't need any motions to move into that since we are already in a public setting. So with that, I think that Jeff and Catherine are working on this one together. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. This is actually a public meeting. It is required to be held when we do look at water rate increases. So this is a requirement. I will read through the report that I have presented, just so it is public knowledge as what's going on and what I'm presenting. So the Township of Lucan Biddulph strives to maintain a very cost-effective and efficient municipal water and wastewater systems. Inflationary pressures on operational, maintenance, and replacement costs throughout 2022 need to be taken into consideration since both of these systems are funded on a user pay basis as per current legislation. The treasurer has updated the 2022 expenditures, and I've provided inflationary numbers to estimate the 2023 operational expenditures for both the water and the wastewater systems. For the water system and for the wastewater system, I am proposing an increase of 2 cents per cubic meter to ensure that the system does run or does not run at an operational deficit. I'm also recommending that the flat rate remain unchanged at this time. As per the water financial plan, it does recommend inflation be accounted for when setting rates. With the current inflation above 6%, I'm recommending that the capital levies be increased by 4%. The increase of the water levy would be 65 cents per month, and the increase for the wastewater would be 87 cents per month, based on for the capital levies. How this all works out for the average homeowner or average utility bill, based on 15 cubic meters per month. The average residential account currently for a 3-month utility bill is $130.29 for water and $182.05 for wastewater. With the recommended rate and levy increases, the average utility bill would be increased to $133.14 for water and $185.56 for wastewater. The total increase is $6.36 for a 3-month billing period. This actually works out very closely to a 2% increase on the overall utility bill. The rate and levy increases are for consideration for council and would be reflected in the 2023 budget. That's the main information that I bring forward. The comment that I would have is one of the things that we do take into account for when we're looking at inflationary pressures on our systems and our costs. And I think this is where it comes into play, is the growth that Lucan Biddulph has experienced in the last year, 2 years. We do look at what growth is being or what development is happening at the present moment, and we do take into account that will increase the revenues as those developments come online. So that plays a very important part. So even though we do have some 6% inflationary pressures, we do have growth that's compensating for some of that.
Okay, thank you for that, Jeff. So at this time, I will open it up, the public portion, to comments from the public on what Jeff has presented, and then I'll take comments from council. Are there any comments from the public on Jeff's report and what he's proposing for our utility rates for 2023? Okay, seeing none from the public. Comments or questions from council? Councillor Regan and then Deputy Mayor Manders.
Thank you. So just Jeff, just 2 quick questions. So you were accounting for the inflationary pressure on operational maintenance and replacement costs. I'm just wondering, what's the actual cost of the water? Is that risen as well? I don't, unless you've mentioned that already.
Yeah, and through the mayor, the cost for the water themselves is part of the operational budget.
Okay.
So as we use water, we bill it out.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Didn't understand it. Now I do. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
My question's similar, but what is Lake Huron, have they given us our price increase yet? And what was it again? It was our last meeting. I think it might have been said, was it 2%? What was that increase? Yeah, because I was surprised that, again, with their water going up 1.5%, I didn't know if it'd be even a higher increase from us from because just simply purchasing has gone up that much. The only other question is, I think for the first time, probably a larger user of water in our industrial park than probably what our municipality's seen coming forward in the future. So does that, I don't quite understand it enough from a revenue standpoint. From a higher user coming in, I understand builds and we want to get 50 builds. Should this excite us that there's a higher water usage user coming into our town, or makes really little difference to our revenues? From a standpoint of a positive impact, because obviously a higher user is harder on our pumps, harder on everything else too. Like, what's your thoughts on that comment? Oh, there we go. So it's a two-sided sword. So the growth, whether it's industrial or commercial or residential, we do be able to spread out the expenses a little better. So growth does assist us in balancing or bringing in more revenue. It's obviously offsetted by extra expenses, but there is that benefit of growth. So whether it's the industrial park or whether some of our commercial development that's taking place will assist us in revenue. Having said that, and we also apply the capital levy to these accounts also. So as we bring in capital replacement costs for our infrastructure now, again, we get to spread that out over more users of the system. The only note I would say, and this doesn't really affect the operational budget or the capital budget, is as we keep bringing on more growth, we do start to use up our reserves. So as we do, take up the capacity of our water tower and our reservoirs, we slowly start to lose the ability to do more growth. But again, I think that would be a discussion very similar to what we're going through on the sanitary side of things. So that's a whole different type of discussion.
From a flat rate, when it comes to the industrial, they pay the same as a regular single household?
Yeah, so our utility bills are set up. We do have a distinction between residential and commercial. We do not have an industrial charge, but basically all accounts are based the same. So if you even a commercial account pays the same flat fee. So they've hooked up to the system just as a house, just as a business has hooked up to the water system, they pay the same amount.
That's why I guess where we benefit or where we make it up is that these higher users are on the rates, water rates, I guess, is where we would, is that typical throughout all municipalities? Where that rate would be the same, the flat rate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of discrepancy among municipalities how they bill out their utilities. Even in a small group as the county itself, there is a number of different versions of the utility bill, the way it's billed out. Examples, some have commercial rates. Some are basing some of their utilities on the size of the water service itself. Meaning that so a large industrial complex would pay a different fee than a residential house. So there is a lot of different ways that water rates are billed out. It does open the door to that, whether at some point we should review what this municipality or how this municipality bills out our water rates. I know we've talked over the last at least 2 years increasing the usage of our like our cubic usage rate, and we've been holding the flat rate fairly steady. And what we've been trying to do is to by increasing the usage rate, actually the heavier users then pay more for the system. And I don't want to say pour more, but they're using the system more.
Yeah, for sure. They're
So I mean, I think that's a fair way of doing it. And the people that do conserve, and they're rewarded by conserving water.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to do that over the last couple of years, but I think and I certainly don't want to get in too much of a discussion, but we still have extremely good, if you try to compare our water usage rates to the rest of the municipality, we have very reasonable rates compared to a lot of municipalities in the county.
Yeah, no, understood that. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lots of good discussion there, and a lot of maybe some of the points I was going to bring up were already discussed, but just two main things that I wanted to comment on. that would, I think, be helpful. One would just be a comparison of our water rates to our peer municipalities, I mean, just in Middlesex County, just to see how we sort of stack up and if there is a big difference. Just, I did a little bit of looking myself, and I do think that our usage rates, like, they do seem quite low compared to our neighbors. I've seen some of the other neighboring municipalities upwards of $2 and $3 and even more for that cubic meter rate. And ours, maybe they just have stayed historically low. And I think that's something that we should look at, is how we do structure it. It's probably a more involved process in how that restructuring works, and we probably need the like an external consultant or something to look at that, and for everything to be justified to make that big change. But I think it is something we should look at. And that sort of ties into the second item that I wanted to bring up, and that's just water conservation. And Jeff, you mentioned it, it really ties, I think, directly to those usage rates. And with our rates being so low per cubic meter, there's not really any incentive for anyone in the township to conserve water. Like, it, when I see it, where it might be like 3 or 4 times lower than some of our neighbors, maybe it's probably worth that we take some extra time and look into this in a bit more detail, because I think water conservation is important, and we're extremely fortunate here to have like basically unlimited access to clean drinking water, but maybe we take it for granted a little bit. So I just wanted to add those 2 comments. I think it'd be great to get a comparison of our peers and those usage rates. I really think we should look at possibly restructuring, increasing usage rates, maybe bringing down the flat rates to sort of incentivize conservation.
Jeff?
Yeah, and through the mayor, I my first, and I agree totally with Councillor Hodgins's comments. But one of the first thing I will say is part of the low rates, and Lucan Biddulph has had lower usage rates for a while compared to other local municipalities. And I think one of the I guess I don't want to call it a pat on the back, but they've done a good job planning the water system. This water system has been managed for a number of years to get to the point where we do have good water rates. So this isn't just dropped out of the sky, or it hasn't been my management in the short term. It's been a very long term management on the system that's got us today where we are. And our goal is to continue that, obviously. But to continue on with Councillor Hodgins's comments, I do plan to bring forward more information on a rate study when we go to budget, when we talk about the budget numbers. And that would be more of a capital exercise. And so it wouldn't be reflected in the operational revenues that we're talking about today.
Thank you.
Well, you were just going to take my question, because I was going to ask about a rate study. So everybody's on the same page about looking at our numbers a little bit further. So that's good. Any other questions or comments? I just want to tell Councillor Hodgins that not everybody has unlimited access. Living on the highest point in Middlesex County, I have to tell you, I do have to conserve my water as it all runs down the hill. But anyways, if there's no further discussion on that report, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder that we receive report number PW-19-2022 for information. And I believe that the fees will be discussed later on when we discuss the fees bylaw. So a mover and a seconder to receive that for information. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay. So we don't have to move out of public meeting or anything like that. Do we? We don't have to move out of public meeting or anything. Okay, we do have a delegation tonight, and I'm pleased to welcome if our friends from the OPP can join us. And it looks like we'll just need another chair up here. Do you mind, Councillor Regan? And as they're getting in place. So I'm pleased to welcome tonight from the detachment coordinator, Dean Croker, from the West Region, Rob Griffin, and also joining the two gentlemen is Kelly Withrow. So welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm going to say it because this will be likely, it is, your last meeting with us, Dean. I'll just say it now. It's been great working with you. We've certainly developed a great relationship over the years that you've been the detachment commander or coordinator. And we certainly wish you well in the next chapter. It's well deserved. And I expect that you're looking forward to it. So with that, I'll turn it over to the three of you.
No, Madam Mayor, thank you very much for the comments. Yeah, it's coming. I'll leave it at that. This is a public meeting, so. Yeah, so before you tonight, what I want to do is just kind of a yearly, because of COVID, obviously we've kind of got off track, being able to meet once a year. So I do want to just go over a comparison of the main policing categories for Lucan Biddulph for year to date for 2022 compared to 2021. And then with Rob and Kelly here, it's a great, gets a little pressure off me to talk about the billing model because they are the experts at it. So if there are any questions with the billing, especially with budgets and new council, they are the ones can answer those questions. So I can move into my short presentation and then open up to questions to council and to the public. And then I'll turn over to Rob and Kelly. So I don't know if there was a. All right, so this. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So the documents on the screen right now is calls for service, is a billing summary. So it just provides an overview of the major billing categories that every community is billed upon. So when we look at the very first one, violent crime in year to date. So this went from January to November 30th is the period, but actually will be November 26th. That's when the system was updated. I ran a report on December 2nd, but there's a few days that are not going to be reported upon. But looking at violent crime, there has been an increase in 2022 versus 2021. And what violent crime is everything from assaults up to murder. Obviously, there've been no homicides in Lucan Biddulph, but assaults, there's various degrees of assault. So a normal fight would be just called assault. Then we have assault with weapons, aggravated assaults where the injuries are much more egregious. We have domestic assaults that are categorized in there. So in those robberies, those type of events are what categorize or captured in violent crimes. Though the numbers are up, and I don't mean to minimize any type of violent crime. For the Lucan Biddulph, they are on the minor side of violent crime. So they're the typical assault. So we've had family disputes where it's family members, brother on brother. So there've been some assault with the weapons has not occurred. So it's been just physical without the violence part with the weapons. So though any increase in violence is not a great thing in the community, and we are starting to see the 2021, we were still under somewhat of a COVID era. Now people are out more in public, more contact with people. And when I looked at the numbers in detail, I don't actually have a very specific answer to be able to give you, like it's as a result of of a certain event. During COVID, we were actually seeing it more of an increase in family disputes because everybody was at home, working from home, doing school from home. So those type of events, we could articulate why numbers went up. But with these ones, it's just across the municipality, there's just been 7 more assaults compared to 2021. Property crime, which is obviously a huge factor for every community. And this one, I'm happy to report, there's a drastic decrease. So we've 2021, you had 64 complete occurrences with property crime, and in 2022, with the same period from January to November, it was 48. And just for property crime, that is everything from mischiefs. So the damage to mailboxes up to somebody breaking into a residence, theft, those type of occurrences. So it's a great sign to see that there's been a marked departure in those numbers from last year. Other criminal code violations, this captures everything that essentially that's not a violent crime or property crime. So, and again, there's been a decrease in the other criminal code sections for Lucan Biddulph compared to last year. Drug possessions, we had 1 in 2022 that resulted in charges versus 4 in 2021. The drug possessions is very much, it's a proactive response to police, for police. So the fact, and I not as a point of an alarm, but just to as just a matter of public interest, the fact that there was 4 charges in 2021 and only 1 in 2022 does not mean that there's a significant improvement in the drug culture in Lucan Biddulph. There's drugs in all our communities. And what we do require is public assistance through Crime Stoppers, through passing information on, because the work that we do, we are bound by procedures and laws. So if we know where there's somebody selling drugs at a house, somebody tells us, it's 103 Main Street, which is the Lucan detachment. So I throw that one out there, and there is no drug trafficking there. I could, but just to be able to say that that's a drug trafficker, or I know that drugs being sold from there, we need more from the public. So, and that's where, it comes back down to the basic principles of our modern policing by Sir Robert Peel. The police are the community are the police. So we, as much as the police are expected to take law enforcement action, that's our charge duty. We also require assistance from the public to help us. So through Crime Stoppers or Madam Mayor, you and I have had personal conversations on that as well. Receiving that information from members of the community, where it's what we call actionable intelligence. We're able to start building files on things that we may already have known, but every piece of the puzzle that gets given to us allows us to build a better picture and have a more impactful investigation or action towards something that is extremely detrimental to any community. Statutes and acts. So those are our provincial statutes. So a common one would be landlord tenant and mental health act. Mental health act is one of the largest statutes that we deal with. It's an increase in all our communities across the province. I'd almost reach out and say, but definitely within Middlesex County from 26, 27, 28, we had seen a 63% increase in our mental health calls to service. And that's then spearheaded where we are today, where the Middlesex OPP in partnership with Strathroy Caradoc Police formed the Middlesex Mobile Crisis Response Team for mental health, where we have each service has a dedicated police officer who is partnered up with a clinician from Canadian Mental Health, a social worker or nurse, and they are going to live calls. So in the past where a mental health call came in, our officers were going, we've received training in mental health de-escalation, but we're not experts. We carry a big toolbox. We're a jack of many trades. Law enforcement would be our main tool, but dealing with the social side of things and the impacts of, and some of these things are not necessarily police matters. Homelessness, drug addiction are not, though they're I don't want to make it sound like we're not caring, but we're not we can bring people forward, but then our community partners are the ones that are able to help. And this is what our MCERT team has been able to deliver successfully, is being able to have experts at the scene at the time when a person's actually in crisis, to be able to deal with these calls immediately. And the biggest thing that we've seen is actually diversion from hospital. So it's actually, there's a benefit to LHSC, which, you know, is, anybody can imagine the stress of the emergency department. We are now diverting by having experts at the scene, being able to say, this person doesn't have to go to the hospital. We can provide assistance support right here. We can provide family support so that that person can be left with family. Where in the past, when we didn't have the experts with us, I'd say 100 times out of 100, police were taking somebody to the hospital because we weren't the experts. We didn't have the ability to be able to make sure that in the best interest of everybody, public and our community member in crisis, that leaving them alone was the right thing to do. So that stigma of mental health is being addressed. So we're not necessarily bringing a person in crisis through the front doors of an emergency department with 2 police officers, and then everybody stops to stare and say, okay, what's going on here? So that's probably one of the highlights of my my time here, was being able to bring the right services to the people. Operational stats. So this again carries a lot of our common occurrences, our court-related matters. So there's again a decrease in our operational matters, and our operational 2, which a big one is alarms and 911 hangups. They're about the same. So it's 105 in 2022 versus 103. So that's pretty well on par. And then our traffic, I've got a different report to just reflect on our traffic. This one's more of an updated one. So we'll go to the second page, please. Oh, thank you. So there's been an increase in traffic collisions throughout the whole area of Lucan Biddulph. So in 2021, there was a total of 114 accidents, 23 personal injury, and 91 property damage. In 2022, we did have 1 fatal accident within the municipality. Our personal injuries went down, but our property damage accidents went up. So a reason for an increase, and we're seeing this, is now that we're back again, sort of out of the restriction of COVID. 2021, there were still a lot of people that were working from home or reduced hours in the office. 2022 is essentially opened back up to business as usual. And so we're seeing more cars on the road. And I can tell you from September through now, and especially the last month and a half, we've had a lot of deer accidents. And that's, I'm not sure if the deer population had a bit of a reprieve during COVID, but appears to be, when I was looking at our stats, there definitely appears to be an increase in the single motor vehicle accidents with deer. So that's in a nutshell, a quick summary of the major billable factors for the municipality. If before I turn it over to Rob and Kelly, if you have any specific questions about this or anything with operations dealing with the Middlesex attachment, I'd be more than happy.
Okay. Questions, Councillor Westman?
The property crimes. So in the years past, we've seen a lot of situations where there's moving groups of people that go around yanking on door handles and stealing out of garages and things like that. I see the numbers are down, and you know, I'm the councillor for Ward 3, so we got Granton over there. We get hit a lot, and you know, I hear from my constituents, there's a lot of concern that is going to keep happening and happening. It's generally drug related. So I don't know what my question would be, other than to say like, what proactive types of work are the OPP doing to kind of nib that before it gets out there? I mean,
so thank you, Councillor, Your Worship. So just a proactive thing again, there's responsibilities that the police have and also the community. One of the things that we and this is not exclusive to any one of the municipalities in Middlesex County, but is we need people to lock their doors. We have to be able to prevent targets of opportunity. Now with that, it does become the onus of the police, and we do through analytics. This becomes a common question I get at some councils is community members will say, I don't see the OPP on my street. I don't see them. So we base our work through analytics, we're trying to work smarter than harder. So we go to where the occurrences are occurring. So when we do see that there's a rash, and it is, we try to discourage it through proactive policing, through police presence in the neighborhood. And I'm not trying to put any unnecessary weight of responsibility on the victims, but some of these crimes are very preventable. Because a lot of times these people, they don't want to break things because that's going to draw attention. So proactively, what we are doing to address that is through our social media accounts. There will be a number of times throughout the year, we will have our Jeff Hare, our CSO, send out messages about lock it or lose it. Our auxiliary members in a number of years ago, they used to go kind of door to door in residential areas doing lock it or lose it for safety and for respect of common law. We don't go on private property now to do lock or lose it, but we will go to community. So to go across the street to the community center, do our auxiliary units will be doing lock or lose it. They'll come around, put windows, just tags on windows saying that your vehicle is locked. Thank you very much. Just to let you know that police were in the area. And that's so. Yes.
Do you have anything else, Alex? Councillor Reagan.
Thanks. Hi. Just a couple of comments. So just more on just what line you were talking about with information programs for residents. Is what I've been hearing is that, with the increased population, people a little bit more concerned just about property and safety and those sorts of things. And I'm just wondering, because I just noticed driving in that there was an OPP session at the library coming up soon. And I'm just wondering if those are going to be increased so people can have an opportunity to be prepared to better protect themselves for property, their own safety. So, and you've touched on that already, but
yeah,
I think, sorry.
No, and absolutely no. And again, that's our main community service officer, PC Jeff Hare. He had been kind of, as we all had been over COVID, there were no public information sessions being out. So yeah, there is one coming up at the library for seniors to deal with anti-fraud. So, but yeah, so if there's any community group that has anything that they want to bring forward, or a municipality has an area that they want, is just contact the detachment, and we will present. And then just as tonight, if it's something that's the expertise is beyond the scope of what we're able to present, we'll bring in the experts to touch on it. So yeah, we're looking very much forward to getting back out to the communities and delivering our proactive messaging.
Thank you. One other. The other thing too that it's been discussed many times around this issue is a speeding problem we have on certain streets. And the one that I just wanted to bring to your attention, I know is when people that on Clandyboy, when their people are coming in on Denfield. And I've heard that several times. I heard that as recently as at the Montreal Canadian game on the weekend, just about what's being done out there. So, I mean, and this is something that we have talked about, and we're working on a speed control plan and with signage and the digital speed says. But I think at this point, when I'm hearing about it all the time now, and I'm just wondering what we can do about that.
No, that's a fair request. And what I would ask, and I can lean on Councillor Westman, because he's brought concerns forward in Granton. So if you have, again, this is where we police where the action is. So again, if you directly or through your worship or through the CAO, if there's any community concerns that you're hearing, let us know. And what we will do is we will assign, so our detachment has a number of dedicated traffic officers, and they work, we have them assigned to shifts, or they can muster together and work together, and we'll assign them to areas. So if with Denfield and Clanboy being there, I can easily tomorrow, and I thank you for bringing, I will let the traffic officers know that we need some attention up here. And it's as simple as that. So they're roving. So if wherever there's concerns throughout the county, we'll address that.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Deputy Mayor Manders?
Just refresh my memory on the false alarms. Is that billable back to the address, or is that up to the township to do that, or am I streaming?
No, there are some municipalities that will have a bill back. Currently, we don't have that in Middlesex County.
So when you say
Or sorry, so Lucan Biddulph does not, or no municipality within the county has that.
then the county has that. Okay, I was just wondering that. And no, I mean, I think it's a great report, 21 going to 22. I mean, I think we could all talk about areas or comments, but I assume where your team will target for traffic incidences will be where the 63 are, not by the odd complaint. I mean, I still got to go by complaint. I'm just saying, that percentage wise, that's a huge jump. I don't know, some of that distracted driving because of, I've always felt coming out of COVID and everyone's head in their lap for, a long time in 2021, is that?
Yeah, so provincially, it's our biggest cause of both of all three categories of accidents is distracted driving now. The distracted driving is overtaken impaired driving as the cause of accidents. So it's for death and no injury. So it is a concern. And we do have a number of provincial campaigns that go on throughout the year that focus on what we call the big four, which is distracted driving, impaired driving, speeding, and seatbelt usage. Trying to curtail. And what amazes me weekly is with the stunt driving. So the 50 kilometer over the posted speed limits, losing your vehicle for being impounded. I can't believe how many people are still driving at those speeds and losing their vehicle for 7 days. The storage fees that come with it, it's astronomical. The license suspension, it's just through enforcement and education. And yeah, I'm not sure I really don't have an answer as to how we can fix that. But to your point though, about having us, focusing on the areas where the numbers are, we absolutely will. But at the same point in time, when we have we'll bring up the Clannaboy Denfield area. Not doubting the concerns that Councillor Regan has received, but what we will do focus, and then what may very well happen is, and we've had this happen in a number of our communities, is that the speeds isn't really as fast as people think it is.
No, it's perceived.
And especially if they're large trucks, so dump trucks, they look like they're going faster than they are. So we will have officers go out there and report back saying, yeah, we were out there for 5 days. This is how many tickets we got, but this is what the common theme. So it's, but with that, I still like to report back because it lets the community know that we were out there and it's that their concern was taken seriously. And if it turns out to be a serious issue, well, then we can develop a longer range plan than through speed signs and whatnot with the municipality to capture. Because the other thing that speed signs bring and is the actual time of day when there may be, a morning rush and an afternoon rush, which is quite often people leaving to get to work. So it's so that we're not wasting our resources at 10 o'clock in the morning or at 8 o'clock in the evening when the traffic's not there. We're able to focus on those times when the violators are actually driving.
Any other comments? I was going to actually ask about the alarm calls because I seem to recall something like that too. But just back to the MCERT program, because I agree with you. I think that is probably the one program. Well, I mean, you've got a lot in your career to be proud of, but I think what that program has done for Middlesex County is incredible. But I guess just from and maybe this is a good segue into funding, is how is it funded? And it is not 24 hours yet, is it? No.
No, it's not. So currently right now, the funding is on the policing side. I've taken an officer off the road and dedicated him, and it's currently him. Aaron Tuffin is our mental health officer. I've taken an officer off the road and created that position for him. I don't like taking officers off the road. It's just one less officer in our community. However, I can tell you the dividends that have paid off with Aaron doing his job with Canadian Mental Health is actually taken officers, diverted them from mental health calls. So the funding is internal with that. The Southwest Lynn, and I'm trying to think what the new name in for the Lynn is. They are the budget holders for the Ministry of Health. They are paying for the Canadian mental health worker. Currently right now, we actually have a second mental health worker working at the office. I was able to secure 2-year grants through the Solicitor General, which expires on March 31st of 2023. I've sent a email to our contact to see what's going to happen in 2023. This is the opinion of Dean Croker, not Inspector Dean Croker. I'd be shocked to see them take a step back, because the provincial government in the election did talk about mental health being a provincial concern. So I would like to see that the second position that we have, which is doing a phenomenal job at providing follow-up to the families, because as our officer and the main clinician are doing live action calls, we have somebody back following up with referrals, making sure that those connections are being made. I don't want to lose that. And with that, Canadian Mental Health has become an excellent partner. So I'm sure there's a mechanism in place that we can come up with something, but the government has to recognize that this is, give us something for 2 years and then take it away. It's not fair to the community. And that was how we attracted the CMHA into it, was when they realized how underserviced the county was. Everything is London centric in Middlesex County. But we have communities that it's not easy to get to the city of London. We have community members that can't get to the city of London. So by having these resources out in the county, has brought that top level service out to them. So that's how it's funded, and where it's going in the future. I would like to see us get to the point where we have almost 24-hour coverage. Again, right now, the coverage we have based off of analytics, we are getting, our clinicians are making it to about 80% of the calls. And then the other ones are being handled after hours. What we did at the beginning of this program is actually had every officer ride with the clinician, so they could see how the calls were being handled by an expert. And again, just throwing more tools into our toolbox to say, for those events where their clinician's not there, is to provide a little bit more expertise for us in handling those situations alone.
Not to just keep going over this, but I know I had the opportunity, it was just after the provincial election, Minister Thibodeau was in London, and we did a tour. I was there on behalf of the county with Mayor Holder. We did a tour of a number of social service programs, and the highlight of the program was the Coast program. So when you talk about how the light shines on the city of London and not on the county, I mean, I had opportunity to speak to what was happening in the county to the minister. He wasn't aware. He thought he thought that the Coast program was the only one there, and I was able to set the record straight. And I might be going out on a leap, but certainly I think that any of the communities in the county would be happy to offer any sort of letter of support or anything when you're trying to make that case for funding, because it's that ripple effect. And as you say, you might only have the one officer, but what he's doing is allowing other officers to look at what else is going on. And, the paramedics could speak to the success of the program as well. So as I say, I might be going on a limb, but I would say anything that we can do to be supportive of that funding request, I'm sure we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. If there's any other questions, I'll just sum it up myself right now. Your worship, councillors, staff, thank you for the last 4 years.
Good evening, everyone. Madam Mayor, Council, thanks for having us. Great conversation already started about partnerships and things that are being done collaboratively within Middlesex County to get all the municipalities involved and have programs like the MCIT that are helping the communities be better. I'm just going to start off. Thanks for having us. Since COVID, we've all been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes on our computers. We haven't been getting out and doing the presentations like we should. It's a great time right now because for our bureau, the Municipal Policing Bureau, that's where I'm from, Rob Griffin, Sergeant there, my colleague, Kelly Withrow, and Dean had us out today to speak of the billing model. October 1st, as council knows, is when our bill goes out for all the municipalities across Ontario. Currently, we're servicing 330 municipalities. We're a small bureau, but we have it broken into regions, and we try to get out and see people when we can. Just to start off, I had a presentation that I was going to put up. This is more of an overview of, you know, the billing model, our role as the OPP, our partnerships with the community. So I put up here on the overview. First, I'm just going to talk a bit about our OPP service delivery model. Really helps us understand, you know, the role of the partnership between the municipalities and the OPP. I'll move into the OPP billing model. It's more of an overview. Just get you back one there again. And I brought along a copy of your statement, so understanding your billing statement. I was going to talk as well about contract versus non-contract. I find a lot of times when we come to these presentations, there's misconceptions or you know, not, I guess you say, not a full understanding of what a contract versus a no contract is. The key is it doesn't change your bill at all, you know, and it doesn't change your service. So I want to talk about that a bit. And then we all know about this mysterious CSPA that's supposed to be coming, the Community Safety and Policing Act. It's supposed to be implemented sometime soon. I wish I could give more on that. I'll tell you what I know, but also the ministry hasn't guided us in any firm date of when that's going to implement. So I'll just go to the next slide here. So first, understanding the OPP service delivery. This is really important because we got to understand that the OPP, we have a lot of provincial responsibilities as well as municipal responsibilities. So, you know, in Middlesex County, for example, there's, I believe, 7 municipalities within this one detachment catchment. So the officers that are servicing this area, it's nothing for them to service 3 different municipalities, maybe do something provincially as well while they're on a shift. And all that stuff needs to be tracked, right? And we have a system called a daily activity reporting system. We refer to it as a DAR. So when an officer does their shift, like right now they're in Lucan Biddulph, they do a call, they'll mark that down, the time that's required to do that, and then they're off to another call, and it could be in a different municipality. And again, that's all for tracking system. They've done a lot with the tracking system. A lot of it's electronical now, so it's tied into our dispatch system to make sure it's accurate. So if an officer gets dispatched to a call, that's captured electronically and then it's moved into these reports. There's a lot of positives as we've already spoken tonight about you know, having this integrated service model. Number one, it shares the cost. Shares the cost of having a building across different municipalities instead of in each municipality. It also allows us to share resources like the MCIT. It's not something one municipality can do on their own. That officer, Aaron, who's doing this program, he'll visit all the municipalities probably in a shift. From my experience of working within a municipality with an MCIT, there is no boundary for the people that we serve. The people, you know, they move municipality to municipality. It's a great way to track and help them get the resources that they require. So the integrated service is a great way to efficiently get these resources to everybody at an affordable price. Let's move to the next slide there. This here is a historical trend. So when the billing model first was implemented in 2015, you can see we have a blue bar and a red bar. The blue bar basically represents the cost of municipal policing province-wide and the change of how it's gone. And you can see it's very stable. The red bar represents the average cost per property per municipality across the province. So across the province, the average, you can see there's been a very little movement. You know, annualized rate, approximately 1% increase. So the one thing we can say about our billing model, it's designed to be stable. Everything's done over averages over a 4-year period. So it helps, you know, say 1 year, a municipality had a spike in crime, and it caused a a large increase. Well, you're not going to see that the first year or the next year on your billing statement because this is all done on averages. So if we just move to the next slide. So talking provincially, there's our provincial budget, $1.2 billion. So that $1.2 billion, that includes everything that the Ontario Provincial Police does provincially. And you can see it says 64%, which is $778 million, is our provincial or specialized responsibilities. When I spoke earlier about our provincial responsibilities, this is something we supply to all Ontarians that we serve. And it includes things like traffic investigations, intelligence gathering. I'll get further into that in a moment. And then on the other side, we have 34%, which is municipal policing resources. So this is what it costs for us to police municipalities. And this is the amount that's very important, this 34%, because this is what the billing model is based on. This is where our cost recovery comes from. So when we talk cost recovery or billing, it's based on this 34%. So we just go to the next slide. This again is the provincial specialized responsibilities. So, this includes things like our Indigenous policing efforts, unincorporated territories, community safety programs, our auxiliary program. All these things aren't part of the cost recovery or the billing model. These come from a different budget, and this is not part of what a municipality is charged for. So you do get the benefits of these by being one of our partners and working with us, but you're not directly billed. If we move to the next slide, we can move into the municipal policing resources. So this is what it costs to police municipalities. So we have our other direct operating expenses. We have our detachment staff, and basically what it costs to run the municipality itself. So moving on to the next slide, that 34%, what we do in the billing model, and again, I'm doing this as a quick overview. We break that 34% into 3 categories. Those 3 categories are base services, calls for service, and additional other costs. So if you can see up there, it says base service. So this is legislated activities like crime prevention, things we do, having a police officer be able to respond to a call 24 hours a day to have them on the road. Also, our proactive initiatives like our ride programs, traffic safety, community policing, intelligence gathering, as we mentioned, officer training. So those are our base service. We always look at the best way to explain it is base services and calls for service. We look at the base services as our proactive and our calls for service is reactive. So the calls for service are our crime calls when we get a radio call from a resident who wants us to come out to help with a criminal activity that's going on, like an assault. Also our provincial statutes, like our mental health calls, our Trespass to Property Act. This also includes traffic accidents, collisions, calls for service. Basically anything a call for service would generate goes into that category. Down below, you'll see additional other costs. Municipalities are billed for specific usage on things like overtime, court security, cleaning and caretakers, accommodations. I know there's no enhancements here in this municipality at the time, but enhancements, sometimes municipalities look for additional officers to do other tasks, sometimes a school resource officer or additional traffic officers. And that's an option when we get into contract policing. Prisoner transportation is also charged. And that brings up the whole bill. So speaking about your bill, next slide. This is going a little quick here. So at the top, you'll see I've outlined base service. So the base service at the top there, we'll see a number there, 165.66. That number for base services, the proactive side of policing, that is the same for every municipality across the province. So how it works is we work with a provincial total, and then we divide it across a property count. The property count comes from impact. And as you can see there in your municipality, you have a property count total right now of, I apologize, my eyesight, there are 2,298, if that's correct, for total properties. That includes commercial properties and household properties. So to find out what your total base service cost would be, you would take your total property count times that base, the cost per property of the 165, which would give you a total of $691. So that's your total base cost. And then your calls for service, which is the reactive, we have a total provincial, so it says total municipalities. So out of all the municipalities calls for service, we have 1,788,576,909. The municipal portion that's represented here is a 0.123% of that total. So that's what is represented as your share of calls for service out of the total municipal, count. So that works out to $95.56 per property. Times that, it gives you a total of $219,000. And that would give you your total base cost and total calls for service. And then, as we mentioned, we have our overtime, prisoner transportation, accommodation, or other direct operating expenses just below there. And in there, we have accommodation and cleaning service. So in this case, we charge a fee for property and cleaning. If the municipality supplied a building and a place for the police, we wouldn't charge that. So this is alternative for us supplying a property. So total for that is a total bill of $280.54 per household or per property. So that would be the total amount. At the end there, you see 2021 year-end adjustment. And what that is at the end of every year, we reconcile the bill to make sure that it balances out for what actually occurred. So all these things are done on a 4-year average. So after the 4 year, we do a reconcile. In this case, for this year, you were in a positive, so $7,319 came off the bill at the end, which is leaving a grand total billing for 2023 of $637,367. So that would be your monthly bill. It's very clear, right? So moving to the next slide
Can
here.
I just make a comment, though? I do find it fascinating that the base service at $165 is the same whether I live in Lucan or whether I live in Temagami or whether I live, like, that is fascinating to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a great question. To be able to supply a service where we can have at hand, when we looked at the base services very quickly there, we have, all of our specialized unit, our crime units, our canine, our helicopter, our airplanes, everything is available for us. And if we, partner and share costs, that's how it makes it so affordable for the province. I put this slide in because it's really good depiction of the year-to-year comparison. And just so everyone knows, if you haven't been on our website, opp.ca, all these tools are available. If you type in municipal policing in the search category on opp.ca, you can go into any of these calculators and do comparisons and check out what other municipalities are doing, how your municipality's been over the last number of years. And this is a screenshot right from opp.ca where I put in your municipality. It shows it's an agreement of 5.1, shows your detachment area, and it shows down below, just what the cost has been per property over the last number of years. And you can see how stable it is, and it hasn't fluctuated much. And you compare it to the OPP average cost per property in the province of Ontario. The average cost right now is $347 per property, and your municipality is sitting at $281. So we can go down to the next slide as well. And this slide here, it's actually one of my favorite slides because it gives us so much information. And the inspector here stole it a little bit from me because he used the slide a little earlier. This is more of a snapshot of when we look at, there's 9 call groups listed here. And so when we speak of calls for service, all those calls for service, they have a place in one of these 9 groups. So if it's an assault, like the inspector mentioned earlier, it would go under a violent criminal code. But he also mentioned earlier that, other things are violent criminal code. So there's a lot of calls in that violent criminal code. But if you look at the grand total, the 4-year average is 20. And I think the inspector has the new numbers because he's the inspector, and it's 21. So that's the That's the new number. So very accurate when you look at 4-year averages. When we have a violent criminal code or a traffic or statutes and acts, we have what they call an average time standard. So across the province, they do an average of what it would take to complete one of these calls. So for a violent criminal code, we'll just use that as an example. They say that the average time it takes across the province is 15.8 hours. So if we can see that at the bottom, I'm just using the bottom row there. Total weighted time, 308, and then total provincial weighted time. So in the whole province, your weighted time is 0.017. So total estimated calls for service for violent crime is 30,731. Looking at this chart, we can also see your top 3 of what calls for service are costing the municipality the most. I think we look at violent crime, it's at 30,000, but if you go up to top, you see operational at 91,439. So it seems like you're operational. And when we talk of operational, these are a lot of calls that we get. And I think the inspector mentioned earlier as well, we'll just refresh what he had spoken of, is these calls are our most common calls. The non-criminal calls, a domestic dispute, landlord tenant. We've got also animal complaints, missing persons, all these things fall under that. So it's normal to see operational as the highest billed. Second most billed call, I believe up there was your property crime, which, the inspector also mentioned is on a downward from what that you've been seeing over the last few years. So moving to the next slide, cost for municipality. I like to do this slide because we can compare the whole Middlesex County detachment and all the municipalities policed within to see where you stand. And this is also available on the opp.ca to see, you can compare yourself against other municipalities. So I've highlighted in blue your municipality, and you can see that it actually gives more years than what I've put up there. It actually goes back 5 years, but just to condense it a little bit to show you over the last few years where you stand within the municipalities. You're at 281 this year. You can see your counterparts up there. I'm going to open up the presentation in front of me here so I can see a bit better for you. I think so. Yeah, so the 281 would be yourselves, and then the highest in the municipality, which would be Adelaide. Yeah, they're at 398 being the highest. So very good numbers in respect to the provincial averages. And again, these charts and calculators are all available on the website. Touching base just briefly on the next slide is what I mentioned at the beginning, the contract versus non-contract. I know right now we're operating our police services to section 5.1 within your municipality. Again, it makes no difference as far as the service itself. You're getting the exact same service as somebody with a contract. If this year you had signed a contract and we're sitting here today, your bill would be the same. So it doesn't make a difference on what you pay. The main differences that are listed basically give you, the why you may want to choose a contract over a contract. One of the main reasons a lot of municipalities choose to go contract is because of some funding that's available that may not be available if you're under a non-contract. So there's some grants. The inspector may be able to speak more on the grants. We don't, as our bureau, we don't facilitate grants. So there are some that are available, but that's not to say that not all, there are some that are. We were just talking about the mental health grant. Even though you're not a contract, that grant in specific it would still be available. So there's a few things with billing, by law enforcement, things like that that are negotiable when you do have a contract. So really good slide. I've left the slide here, so if I can also email out to council these slides as well, just to give you some future reference if you don't already have these. CSPA, the Community Safety and Policing Act. I don't know. So there was a new Solicitor General appointed at the end of the year, and there's a lot of changes going on. There's talk now. I know there's been some letters going out to the municipalities about future detachment boards that need to be put together. And, you know, that's all signs to me anyways that this thing's moving forward. It's just a matter of, you know, when that does happen. And what does that mean for us and our relationship? In my opinion, it's pretty much going to remain the same. You know, we have our relationships with the detachment. We still police and do the same job. We still have the same partnerships. It's just now there will be no pressure for a contract or anything like that. These grants that used to require a contract, you could draw an inference now that if no one has a contract, they must be open to everybody, right? So that will change. And you know, I just see it as being just a new process. You know, the OPP, we support modernization of policing and technology to help us get the job done. And, you know, I think redoing the act is probably a step in that direction. So that's where we're at with that. Next slide. I'm basically open for questions. Myself or my colleague, Sergeant Withrow. Any questions about billing?
Okay.
Oh, before we start there, just add one last thing too. This time of year, like I say, our billing goes out. We also, within our bureau, we have a financial services unit. There are accountants and the people they write down to the decimal point, and they actually host a webinar. And I'm sure everyone got their invite. There's actually 2 dates. Today was the first date for the webinar. So if you didn't get to that one today, the next date is December 14th. And I will make sure that you get another invite to that just in case somebody didn't get it, but they can speak to the decimal on all these numbers and exactly what, if you have a specific accounting question, it's really great. They do an awesome job to explain the billing model in detail. So.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually sat in about half of the one today. So no, it was good. It was really good. Very informative. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Rob. Any comments or questions for all the information that we've just received from Rob? Deputy Mayor.
I've got a couple things. I'm gonna bring you to a all candidates meeting we had. So, and just rather than putting a fork in your eye, I'm curious how you'd answer this. So when it was interesting, it was an interesting question. You know, they just said, you know, how would, I think it was speeding, but just, it could be anything on your list, but you know, what would you do if you were elected, or what would be your ideas? No speeder, radar signs, silhouettes, you know, different ideas for traffic calming. But one of the comments was, and it was an interesting one, actually, I found it interesting. You know, I'd add an extra police officer. You know, I'd add to the attachment. Well, that's interesting, because I really don't understand how we, you know, could quantify that time in our municipality. And I thought, you know, it got me thinking, is that even possible, and how that, you know, how that could look. And it was like, you know, all of a sudden Facebook, you know, blows up as all, you know, they're checking cars the next day and they're saying, oh, current council doesn't want to invest in the policing. And this is very interesting. I'm hoping Lisa will put this on the website. This is probably the best report I've seen, or that I've seen, I feel, since I've been on council. So it's interesting. So could you talk to me a little bit what I just said?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you talk about adding an extra officer, absolutely possible. And that's one of the things when we had up on the screen, the difference between contract and non-contract. If you have a contract, there's possibilities for enhancements, meaning an enhancement officer. I think I spoke a bit about very quickly about, you know, sometimes a municipality may have a need for a resource officer in the school. So they may get an enhancement to bring in and work in a specific school. Another thing is traffic issues. Traffic's a major concern for the OPP. You know, if we go across our municipalities in Ontario, it's always listed as one of the top 3 for what's going on out there and what needs to be fixed. And we have a provincial responsibility with our traffic teams that we're working on, you know, trying to hit those hot spots. And we have our traffic services that goes out and tries to conquer that. But when it comes to niche policing, like you said, an enhancement officer would be great if we could have somebody who's dedicated to a specific spot and work a specific corner. Say that's your bad spot there. That's definitely feasible.
But not like you, and you mean we could do it sporadically through the year, or do you mean it would need to be like just because your billing model doesn't equate to that possibility?
Well, The thing is.
that we could quantify that to the ratepayer. Your
And-
taxes are going up 2%
Right.
to offset $100,000 police officer. And this officer, our staff can quantify that extra hours is in our municipality. That can be done?
Well, yes, it can, because when the police officer, at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about the DAR system, about the daily activity reporting. So when an officer goes out, if they were an enhancement officer, they would go out and they would be doing their DAR, their daily activity report, to that traffic initiative. If they were pulled away and they were doing something different, it would go to that. So at the end of the year, when we reconcile everything, we get those timestamps, and that officer wasn't doing the enhancement that they were, hired to do or being paid to do, then you wouldn't be charged for that. So that would not be billed.
That's interesting. And again, and what's really interesting out of all this is that report doesn't say we need that. It's interesting where the incidences on everything other than traffic, which is still 63 over the course of a year. Where I find this really interesting, then the flip side of my question is, compared to that all candidates meeting, is this isn't going to go over well, and I don't quite mean what I'm about to say, but reducing our services. Can we quantify reducing our services? If that report continues and our municipality does a better job of locking their doors, we put up more, traffic calming solutions, and we do lots of stuff, can we quantify and do the exact opposite of what I just said?
I was trying to
Reduce policing in Lucan Biddulph. Because of this report is a great report that shows, it's actually, we don't have as many incidences, which should be all of our goals, which is great. But if there's another municipality that unfortunately the report doesn't look like this, can you take those resources and obviously, and they're going to go to another area within the county, and ours then should be reduced. It's almost like that, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing, other than you're excited about when I said adding one, but you don't seem as excited about reducing. So, yeah.
Wouldn't that be
and
the,
again, we got to remember.
I am from that report.
The integrated service. So the police officer, you're not charged per officer.
No,
You're charged for calls for service.
right.
So it's not really to do with the officer. If the officer is not attending the call, they're doing something else, whether it's provincial responsibility or responding to that at other municipalities. So reduce calls for service, yes, but the removing a member, it wouldn't affect you either way.
Gotcha.
Right.
but just on that, but if our calls for service lowered and people locked their doors and weren't distracted driving, and you saw all of that, then we would see a lower cost at the end of the 4 years, probably,
Yeah,
right?
so it's
That's how
just
it would
on a
work, right?
four-year
If-
average. So you could have a reduction this year, but next year it goes up. So everything's a 4-year average. But we also got to remember that the base service is the same for everybody. So the base service isn't going to change, but the actual calls for service number, yes, when you look at it, and the inspector was talking about a reduction in property crime, that number is less than it is the previous year. So do costs go down? Yes. Right. And you can see it in yours. But like I say, the change of that, because it's done on averages and everything, you're seeing it in, $1 or $2 per
Right.
property. You're not seeing it as, $100 reduction. It's not.
But calls for service, we need to do better in Ontario, all of us, not just us.
Yes.
Obviously, like as the mayor said, like, it's amazing that, I look at that line item and it's disappointing as you have been able to enjoy our meeting tonight. Talking about, I'll use water rates as an example. If we can use less water, the people can, save some money. Well, if we don't have as many calls of service and we promote a safer community, it really doesn't do that much for us. But I mean, we want to and we need to, but I'm just, it's interesting, that billing line, that it doesn't promote, I think the mayor alluded to that. It doesn't promote a cost savings for those communities that are investing in more tools in the toolbox from a municipal standpoint to make things safer. You're not incentivized to do that.
Right.
Under this, as a municipality, we could have 10 radar speed signs, silhouettes, doesn't matter what. It just, you're not incentivized for that savings, but okay. And then it's a question I'm going to always ask when you're here is just the detachment. I think ever since the North one closed and Exeter, it's always a concern of ours.
you know, how could that happen? Is there anything we can do? We want to be proactive. Our community loves that detachment there. Last time you were here a couple years ago, you know, it's not on the table, never with, you know, no worries, you know, nothing. So I guess if I hear that again, then that's great. So.
Yeah, so as of right, well, I can speak to about the what happened up in Huron County. So that's the OPP, it's called our modernization plan, and that was phase 2. Phase 3 was supposed to be announced a year or so ago. But I'm gonna say that there's been money spent on COVID that wasn't planned. They weren't planning for a pandemic. So I think any capital infrastructure plans that they had been put to the side. So where I'm going with that is I'm not sure if Middlesex was in modernization 3. I've planted a seed, and again, this for what it's worth, because it doesn't really come down to the OPP. There's Infrastructure Ontario and the communities that decide where, and not so much communities, it's really Infrastructure Ontario and provincial government where these buildings go. I've met with our new chief superintendent when he first came, and he's been here for 2 years. I took him for a tour of Middlesex County under the knowing that he would have a louder voice than I would at a table when these ideas are being discussed at our corporate command level. Driving him through Middlesex County, where if we went to a single detachment there, and I'll be upfront, there are some benefits to a detachment to have one building. For our quality assurance audits, all our infrastructures in one building, but it doesn't serve our communities well, and that's what I'm alive to. If we were to be identified for a new building, I've asked our chief superintendent to find out what square footage that would be and divide it into 2. Because we have the city of London, as great as it is to live so close to it, it is cumbersome and a nuisance to get through. So if we had, because we also have to be alive to the fact we have to have a response to the 400 series highway. So we had a detachment closer down towards there. And then what's happening to Lucan, Park Hill, Elsa Craig, when we have, so our chief superintendent's in agreement to bring it forward. If when that conversation happens, is to have 2 detachments within. And I have, again, and this is Dean Croker for what it's worth. I've suggested the one be in Lucan. If we had 2, that one would be in Lucan, because it also assists our partners in Huron County, where they have a zone in Exeter, which used to have a building. So if they have, it's closer to get to Lucan than it is to Clinton for breathalyzers, doing those type of things. So I think there's merit to still have a footprint here. But as of right now, sir, there is no change. The detachment's not going anywhere. There is absolutely no talk right now where Middlesex is going. What I would say proactively on council is that you have these conversations also with your member of provincial parliament. Those are where a lot of the conversations can be directed, and yep. Yeah. So and I'll like I said, I've had that conversation with our chief superintendent. So I'm at your meeting tonight. I have no qualms about if you're speaking with your member of provincial parliament, that's the concern of the detachment commander, is where could we, if we could have something in Fanshawe and Richmond, we would have a very good response to, but that will never happen. We're not building an OPP detachment in the city of London. It's going to be in the county. So it's where it best serves the county. And I think two separate buildings would serve the county well.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. No, he's here for support. No, thank you very much for coming and joining us tonight. It was great. And I would agree with the deputy mayor that, the billing presentation that you gave, Rob, I think for our residents, I think they'll learn a lot from that. And it's well constructed. And I think that we'll certainly share that with our residents. So thank you.
And Kelly's real role was make sure we didn't say anything we weren't supposed to. So we didn't get wrapped on the hand, so I think we were good. So
Quality assurance.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much.
again, Councilor Westman, thanks very much. It's been a joy to be to finish my career as a task commander in Middlesex. So it's thanks very much. It's, as you can tell, bittersweet. So yes, I was. Yeah. So and that was my desire was to retire as a detachment commander. The organization had some other plans for me, but I wanted to come back and retire here where I enjoyed it. So thank you.
Okay. I was gonna say, has he come to your meeting yet? Oh, there you go. All right, so we'll move on now and we'll go to the minutes. So we've got the minutes from the November 15th in front of us. And if there is nothing to be amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes as circulated. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? That is carried. Oh, right. Yes, thank you. I had that right there. Thank you very much. Tina just reminded me, we do need a motion just to receive the OPP report for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman, all in favor? That's carried. We'll move on to the business arising from the minutes. And there hasn't been anything that has been added. I think there was a couple things taken off. We're going to be dealing with one a little bit later. Was there anything that council wanted to add to the business arising list? Okay, then correspondence. We've received a number of items over the last, I guess, 3 weeks since we met. Staff hasn't pulled any. Did Councillor Regan, I believe, wanted to speak to one item?
I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first letter from Minister Clark, but I understand from your email, you're going to address this during councillor comments. So perhaps we can do that. So my concern, as I'm reading through the letter in the very last paragraph, it suggests that I guess what I'm looking for is that I'm just concerned that we're making the province aware that Lucan Biddulph's done everything it's possibly could to sort of follow the rules, I think, with our growth. And when I was concerned, this is about Bill 23, but I was just sort of concerned that, he stated that we want to work with our municipal partners. And I'm understanding that, and I'm very happy to hear that, but I'm just wondering how we're going to make sure, and what steps are we going to make sure that they know that we've been following the rules, and when it comes to the collection of development charges and the new rules around that. So I'm just wondering how we're going to speak to that.
Okay, so I'll talk about it, and then I don't know whether Ron or Dan want to chime in, but this, of course, the letter that we received is from Minister Clark, and it has to do with Bill 23. So as you know, we did submit comments to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. They were collecting comments with concern. So those were sent in. I think it was at the last meeting that Ron presented the letter that was sent on behalf of council. Then last week, Premier Ford made some comments at an event that I think, needless to say, incensed me. And so I've drafted a letter. I shared it with council, outlining the concerns that I have, speaking on behalf of council, with Bill 23, specifically with the development charges and the effect that the staggering of new development charges will have on us, and having to, and speaking to the wastewater treatment plant. And so it's been sent, it'll be sent to the Premier tomorrow and MPP McNaughton and Minister Clark are both copied on that. Just for information, the last paragraph of my letter, I do invite the Premier to come to Lucan Biddulph to participate in our budget discussions so that he can see how the effects of Bill 23 could affect municipalities, and to get a better understanding, as you say, how we have done everything that has been asked of us. We account for our development charges. We spend our development charges when we're supposed to spend our development charges. We report them when we're supposed to report them. We do all that. So whether he takes me up on my offer, we'll see, but I've made that. I would suspect that both the Premier and Minister Clark, and I would suspect all local MPPs that sit on the government side will receive similar letters from municipalities across the province with concerns. I think that we'll try to get delegations coming up. I know the county's working on a robust response. As Abby said, they're doing a presentation to council on Tuesday. At our next council meeting, and I mean, you never know what will be asked of county council. They could ask that to be forwarded as well to with a response from county council. So I think that we're actively speaking to it.
Right.
Did you want to add anything?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to add in the one letter we received after this one that's in our package tonight. Actually, I think I actually forwarded it to the mayor and to a few members of the staff and said there seemed to be a sliver of hope. And in that letter, which will appear in your next council package, it did say that the Minister Clark made the comment that municipalities would not be financially impacted, negatively financially impacted by the outcome of Bill 23. However, as much as that gave us hope, the comments of the Premier the next day sort of flipped that around, and it made it seem like absolutely not. You know, municipalities can find savings. There's no reason they can't find savings. We're talking about 1%, I think was his comment. You know, it certainly got blood pressures to rise, because that really to us anyway, it seemed like there's no understanding of how the Development Charges Act works. And so I think in our case, Lucan Biddulph's case, that's where we will put most of our focus on, the financial impact to us. So the one part in Minister Clark's subsequent letter to the one in the package, it did say that in response to sort of I guess the backlash that they're receiving through the media and through other municipalities, that they are going to send out audit teams, but it did say to select municipalities. So what that means, I don't know. Are they going to pick the ones that they know it's going to come out to their advantage? I don't know, but it's disappointing. But I do think the mayor has got the right to line in there, invite them out to see what we do here. And I think if we're granted an audience with Minister Clark and the Ministry of Infrastructure at the Roma conference coming up at the end of January, that would be our perfect opportunity to exactly put the impact in front of the ministry.
Right.
I think, remember when we presented to Minister Clark in August at AMO, and we talked about our wastewater treatment plant project, and we spoke about the challenges that we will have even with an increased development charge, what that, the implications that can come from that. He even then spoke then about an understanding that development charges aren't the be all end all for growth, paying for growth. I think he did allude to that. So the letter that was received last week from him, as Ron said, gives you hope that maybe they're looking at some funding options for municipalities. And if that's the case, that's great. But then the leader comes out and says something different, don't know if the right hand's talking to the left hand. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ron.
Were there any other letters that we received or items of correspondence that we received over the last 3 weeks that council wanted to speak to? Okay, then seeing none, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information purposes, please. Councillor Regan, Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. On to committee reports, Blue Water Recycling.
No, nothing to report. We had a quick gathering for lunch. There's 4 or 5 members that are no longer going to be on the board going forward to the new year. So there's going to be a quite a change at that board in the new year. So yeah, so.
CEDC, nothing. Lake Huron, we don't have anything. We don't meet until January, and like Blue Water we will be a very new board. Nothing from fire boards. ABCA and Upper Tem.
I wasn't able to attend the meetings due to work commitments, but the minutes are in the correspondence for anyone who has any questions. We are also sending a letter from the ABCA to the province, bringing concern about Bill 23. So, because it affects municipalities, conservation authorities, healthcare, like everything. It's got a big impact. So we're concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, nothing. So on to staff reports. And the first one up is from Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report, CAO 19-2022, is with regards to the Quadro Communications Water Tower lease renewal. This the Quadro Communication Company has a series of antennas and related equipment that is atop our water tower in Lucan. It's been there for over 20 years, and we have had the pleasure of working with them. They are easy to get along with, and they are a community partner of ours. So we've been very happy to be able to cooperate with them on this project. It is, however, coming to an end. That antenna is actually for wireless internet over the air. So with the advancement of fiber optics being installed in the ground, the number of customers that continue to use that wireless internet service has declined to the point where you can see the amounts are reducing. Through our I guess relationship with Quadro Communications, we have been able to secure some pretty good service from them for our various facilities, including this facility we're in right now, the arena, both fire halls, etc. So the amount of monthly savings to the township because of this agreement works out to $928.35 a month. So that's on an annual basis, that's $11,140. So the actual lease rate of $1,932 a year doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you double that up with the savings that the township is enjoying on an annual basis, it does seem to make sense. The interesting part is the previous draft or leases were for a period of 4 years. Because of the uncertainty in the number of customers, they're asking this one to be a 2-year lease. So again, we're pretty comfortable with the company. So we are recommending that council extend this agreement for a period of 2 years, and a copy of the agreement is attached to the report. We have ensured that they have the proper insurance clauses in there, which they do. The termination clause, which I think is important to talk about, both parties have the right to terminate the agreement by giving 180 days notice to the other party, and the township has the right to terminate the lease agreement within 15 days of non-payment. So obviously this is a long-term thing. We know them. Non-payment has not been an issue, obviously. But at the end of the lease, Quadro does agree to remove its equipment in the event of termination of the lease, and shall be responsible for the repair of any damages caused to the building during removal of the equipment. So again, the recommendation from staff is to extend the lease for a period of 2 years as per the draft agreement attached.
Okay, thanks. Questions on this one? Okay. The motion in front of us is, let me put my glasses on, that report CAO 19-2022 be received for information and that staff be authorized to enter into a renewed lease agreement with Quadro Communications Cooperative Incorporated, and that's on the Lucan Water Tower. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor, and that's carried.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report is with regard to the issue of backyard chickens. This one has been ongoing for a few months now. This was originally raised, I believe, back in August and September. We have looked into this extensively, obviously. The purpose of the report is obviously to bring forward the report and deal with the request of two individuals. I believe that the correspondence from the two individuals is attached to the report. And they request that council reconsider the prohibition of backyard chickens in urban zoning designations, basically in Lucan, Clandeboye, and Grand. So R1, R2, R3 zonings. So the township's current zoning bylaw currently prohibits backyard chickens. According to section 2.3 of the zoning bylaw, agricultural use is where that prohibition is contained. Section 2.7 of the zoning bylaw states that livestock shall mean farm animals kept for use or for propagation or intended for profit or gain, and without limiting the generality of the foregoing includes cattle, horses, swine, sheep, laying hens, chickens, turkey boilers, emus, turkeys, goats, geese, ducks, mink, and rabbit. So earlier this year, bylaw enforcement personnel responded to 4 complaints about backyard chickens in the Granton area, which gave rise to the request that council consider amending the zoning bylaw to allow backyard chickens in urban areas. To our knowledge, no lower tier in the municipality or in the county of Middlesex has allowed this. We are aware of 3 municipalities that have recently considered this. And when I say recently, I mean within the last 5 years. None of those 3 have come back and allowed it. And this is obviously a passionate issue for a lot of people, and it's a sad thing. But what gave rise to this initially was almost a neighbor versus neighbor type issue, which is a very sensitive thing to try and deal with. In the report, we go through what the benefits of the backyard chickens are, and the ones with backyard chickens certainly will contend that there is a lot of benefit to it, and if they're properly looked after, then there's no issues. A couple of the people that we've spoken to certainly have made it known that they've had these chickens for quite some time, and things went fine. However, there was a complaint that was raised, and then our bylaw officer is forced to go out and deal with that issue. And there is no question that backyard chickens in accordance with our current zoning bylaw is a prohibited activity, and they have gone forward and removed the chickens from the site. So we talk about the benefits of backyard chickens, the ability to provide fresh eggs for the homeowner, provides an educational opportunity to children to learn about our food sources. Manure can be composted and used as fertilizer, contributes to sustainable living, promotes an active lifestyle. Chickens can control some pests such as grasshoppers, snails, mosquitoes, and ticks. The drawbacks of backyard chickens, however, there are possible nuisances from things like noise and odor from improperly managed waste, possible increase in rat population, as well as predators such as foxes, coyotes, and raccoons. Poultry can be a source of disease and require health management or veterinary care, as well as basic biosecurity measures to minimize the occurrence or spread of disease. Minimum distance separation requirements do not apply to livestock within settlement areas. Incompatibility with residential uses in urban areas, disposal of deceased birds, they could end up in the waste rollout containers. Increased enforcement and oversight costs to manage regulations, and cost of initial setup, chicken coop fencing, cost of birds, etc. So I say in my report, while it is unfortunate that municipalities have to either prohibit or regulate chickens, it should be noted that most backyard chicken owners would adhere to proper rules regarding the management of their backyard chickens. There are, however, invariably one or two residents that will not, and it's those few that it becomes a necessity for these types of rules and regulations. Council obviously has to make rules that pertain to or that benefit the majority of residents, and I think that's what it kind of comes down to. It is because of these few that municipalities have to set the rules for and enforce them through monitoring and inspections. Monitoring inspections take time, and then there is a cost to the municipality for this type of activity. Through my research, the city of Woodstock has allowed backyard chickens without a license or permit through an amendment to their general zoning bylaw. And that's, I sort of have an excerpt from their I believe it's their municipal code in there, which basically outlines the location of the chickens in relation to neighboring dwellings. The city of Guelph allows, quote, domestic poultry under certain condition and charges a fee, although they more or less administer the program through the local humane society. But again, both of those do have costs to administration. Whether you want to charge a fee for it or not, that's a question for council to cover those costs. Like I said, the majority or all the lower tiers in the county do not allow backyard chickens. If council wishes to proceed forward with allowing backyard chickens, a general amendment would be required to the zoning bylaw. So we talk about options. Obviously, option one would be status quo. Council chooses not to proceed with any changes to the zoning bylaw to allow for backyard chickens. Number two, council could instruct staff to draft a general amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow for backyard chickens in urban areas without any type of permit or license, similar to what the city of Woodstock does. Or number three, council could instruct staff to draft a general amendment to the zoning bylaw and related amendments to the fees and charges bylaw to allow for backyard chickens in urban areas via permit or license system similar to the city of Guelph. So the impact to our budget, obviously the impact of budget depends on what direction council goes with this issue. If council decides to stick with the status quo, there will not be any impacts to budget. If council decides to proceed with a general amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow for backyard chickens, there will be an impact to budget as there will be staff time devoted to drafting the amendment. In addition, there would have to be a corresponding increase in the bylaw enforcement budget to account for time spent on issuing licenses, if that's the way council decides to go. Any inspection and monitoring. These increased costs could be offset by instituting an appropriate licensing. So again, there are three options out there. For the number of requests we do get, Madam Mayor, it's my recommendation that we remain status quo.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ron, for that report. Comments or questions from council? Councillor Westman.
Well, as you all know, this is a matter that is near and dear to my heart. We have had residents in the municipality keep chickens for a number of years without incident, without problems. I'm pleased that staff has put together this recommendation here. I want to say that the practical benefits of keeping a few backyard chickens, the eggs, the education, giving food security to families that are struggling or that just need a little bit of a ease up on their grocery bill. Those practical benefits far outweigh any of the potential setbacks that might occur. Many municipalities, many cities across Canada have given the opportunity to residents to keep backyard chickens in a limited basis. I mean, we certainly don't want people having a commercial egg production in their backyard. We don't want people having dozens of chickens. But I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to permit a limited number of chickens for the purpose of laying eggs or educating children, and to provide a little food security for families. I think it would be something that we could do and we could manage quite well. the idea that there would be a lot of staff time involved in monitoring and so on. I don't know that that's the case. I mean, it would have to bear out over time to see what would be. I would hope the council would be open-minded to the idea of at least giving this a try. You know, even if we look at it on it for a couple of years to see what the impact would be, and give residents the opportunity to work with this and to do it. I think it would be beneficial to our community as a whole, and I really want to implore council to give it a serious thought and you know, let's do this. Let's give people the opportunity for this. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westman. Any other comments from council at this time? Is your hand up, Councillor Regan?
So being a teacher, the idea of the educational value, the food value is certainly not lost on me. You know, my grandkids have 12 chickens, but they live on a lake in Sault Ste. Marie where there's, there is no bylaw. My concern with this, I guess, is a couple of things. One is that if you say chickens, then somebody's going to come next week and ask for turkeys and pot-bellied pigs, and where does it end? So if you say say yes to one, you're going to have to say yes to others. Isn't this what I think? And I have to be honest with you, and this first came up when I was, campaigning, and this actually came up as, I didn't bring it up, other people brought up about the chickens, and they were quite adamant they don't want to live next door to somebody who has chickens. So the vast majority of people I spoke to is that just not something that they really don't want to do. They live in an urban area, which is sort of their argument. So I would not be supportive of changing the bylaw just for those reasons. So thank you.
Any other comments from council at this time? Councillor Hodgins?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one, and like I was certainly leaning more towards supporting staff's decision and I guess being done with this and staying with the status quo. It's difficult, that it's more challenging as well, knowing that there's been these other 3 municipalities that have gone through the same process. It's not the first time this has come up, and it's consistently been rejected. And it'd be nice if we didn't have to be, I guess, the first one to sort of pilot this, and because there are impacts, there's costs, and it just really has to be looked at from both sides, and fairness for the people that want to keep the chickens and the people that don't want the chickens next to them. Yeah, I think generally I agree with staff's recommendation to maintain the status quo. I'm open to listening to more conversation here.
Did you have a comment?
Madam Mayor, just one additional part that I didn't actually put in the council package, and it just popped in my head. I thought I should have put it in there. We did have a request probably about, I'm going to guess about 10 years ago, and I'm going to look to Lisa to help me out on the timing here. But we did have an issue in Lucan where somebody did have a rooster. Obviously, roosters doing what roosters do. That we got the complaint, and then we found more chickens, and the same process happened. The bylaw officer went there, and they had to get rid of the chickens. But of course, they did appeal to council at that point in time to change the bylaw, and the council, they rejected it back then as well. So I should have put that in the report, and my apologies for missing it.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, and I guess from my standpoint, I just haven't had enough community comment on wanting to reverse our bylaw that was passed years ago. So I'm satisfied with the existing bylaw until I, certainly hear more people, wanting this changed. So they certainly, again, you represent both sides, the people that want the bylaw changed and those that like the bylaw as it is. And for right now, I feel there's more people in Lucan Biddulph that like the bylaw as it is. So for that reason, I would
recommend Ron's report suggestion.
Thank you. I have to echo what Deputy Mayor said, and I know Councillor Westman, it is a passionate subject, especially in Ward 3. And I can sense your disappointment in the discussion around the horseshoe. But I've just come off of 6 weeks of knocking on doors and speaking to ratepayers. And the point that the Deputy Mayor makes about feedback, certainly of all of the issues and concerns that our residents in Lucan Biddulph have about, how we conduct business, how we spend money, backyard chickens was not a topic of discussion. And, I just think that nobody likes to say status quo, but I have to support staff's recommendation with this. Any other further comments or questions on that? So we do have a recommended motion in front of us. To just find it. Okay, here we are. That report CAO-20-2022 be received by council for information, and further that council reject the request to amend our zoning bylaw to allow for backyard chickens in urban areas. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, did you have anything else, Ron? Any verbals?
No,
What's that?
that's late enough.
Okay. Okay. No, you can make the announcement.
Just one quick one. Actually, the mayor had the opportunity to present Paul Smith, our Parks and Recreation Manager, with a certificate from York University. Paul has successfully passed the Parks and Recreation Management Certificate. So congratulations to Paul Smith for that accomplishment. Congratulations.
Congratulations again, Paul. Okay, on to the clerk's department then, or continuing over to the other part of the clerk's department. Tina.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor and Council. Before you was just a report regarding proposed amendments to our fees and charges bylaw. As you're aware, the fees and charges bylaw is set to recover costs providing various services. Section 391 of the Municipal Act authorizes the municipality to enact bylaws to impose fees or charges for services or activities. And this is to alleviate the financial impact on tax and user ratepayers and the cost to customer specific services. Staff has reviewed the bylaw and proposed a few amendments, and they're laid there on the chart on the second page. I'll just go through them quickly. The Schedule A, the burial permits, we are considerably lower than most municipalities. So we are proposing to raise that fee to be consistent to 20. Fence viewer application fee, well, we do not have, we haven't had any instances for fence viewers. There isn't an actual fee on our bylaw that if it did come to play, that there would be an application fee. So we just want to make sure that's covered off in the interim. Staff is also looking at this appointment of fence viewers. It is a legislative requirement, but thankfully our neighboring municipalities have recently discovered that a municipality can pass a bylaw regarding the Division of Fence Acts. And we are looking into that so that actual designation, because we are required to designate 3 fence viewers, and that becomes a difficult task in itself for that job. Specifically, also, it's not something that we have requests for in Lucan Biddulph. Also, we've just clarified that since we've implemented Paymentus, that all direct costs for using that are charged to the user. And then on Schedule B, Public Works Department has suggested an increase in our plumbing, meter and valves, water meter installations. the costs have increased from the suppliers, so this will cover that cost. Also, Schedule C, the Public Works and Engineering schedule, the proposed changes are outlined on there, and those are just in line with rates that were discussed during the public water meeting if council was to approve those. So the idea is that we're showing what the adjustments would look like at this point, and the bylaw would come back at a later date for approval. The planning development side, we've just kind of reviewed, and our site plan application fee, we have had quite a number of those applications recently, and they have been more staff intensive, I would say. So our fee is lower than most municipalities, so we are recommending upping that, just to recognize the extra work that's going into that and being in line with our neighbors. The fire department, the chiefs have reviewed and suggested as a minor amendment there, just brings the fee for cylinder refills to the fee that we're receiving from Fire Marquee. And then Schedule F, the Parks and Recreation Department. Paul, our Parks and Rec manager, has went through that and outlined the proposals, and he's also provided a report on those recommendations, which at this point, if anyone has any questions with what I've went over, I'll answer now. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Paul to touch more on the Parks and Recreation schedule.
Councillor Regan. Did you have a question for Tina?
I do. I'm just looking at some of the increases, like from $1,000 to 1,500, like a 50% increase. Like,
On site plan application?
yeah, so it just, I mean, unless I missed it, but it's just, it says more tasking, it's in line with neighboring municipalities. I mean, is it really, I mean, is that 50%? And then the other one is like 30% difference. So is that, I'm just asking, like, why the big jump? When I see 50 and 30%, I'm thinking like.
I see what you're saying. But I think we haven't adjusted our fees appropriately in some of those instances in quite a while. So yes, it might be, it is more of a major jump at this time, but we are certainly open to, kind of doing that in a staged approach, increasing it by smaller increments at this time. But kind of when we look at this, we compare our fees to all of our neighboring municipalities. And in those couple of instances, we were low. There isn't anyone that has fees as low as us in those instances. So that's kind of where staff was justifying that.
We're catching up.
Catching up, yes.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions for Tina? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one. So with our utility rates, our water and sewer, that requires like a public meeting and that to be open to public comment. But for these fees and charges, we don't necessarily have to have that public consultation. Is that correct?
For the rest of the fees on the fees bylaw? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, like similarly earlier on the agenda when we had the public meeting, like the technical public meeting. But that's not required for these, correct? Like we're good just to update those administratively?
From what I understand, it's not required in our current procedural bylaw and notices. It is something that if council wants to consider in future providing notices on the fees update, we can certainly look into that, and some municipalities do that, but we're not legislatively required to implement that, I believe.
Okay,
thank you. Wrong.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
I guess I was gonna wait and just comment at the end, but I guess it's this does have something to do with this. Again, as we're all in Ontario talking about Bill 23. And one thing that did when I was reading this that got my attention was cost of increase from supplier. And I'm actually not being sarcastic in saying this. Daniel, I agree with sending the letter. We're doing, sometimes I call it feel good stuff. We say it's a majority government. Really, is this just going to pass anyways? Is it just going to go right in the shredder? Hopefully they read it. But, changing that narrative to what can we do? And I look at that and, maybe a metering valve in our municipality goes to, $5,600, whatever the difference is in the cost of that development charge. let's be a leader. Let other municipalities look at us, and then costs have increased because of the provincial government. I mean, I would love us to do that when this happens. And if we have 10 different metering charges to represent, you know, whether it be, and I don't understand it enough as far as, you know, an apartment building and condos, and if it's all the same. But, you know, we need to do something like that. And I think our staff, and I think we should, and I would have no issue with that. So I wanted to make that comment that, you know, again, we're doing lots of feel good stuff, which is great, but I think we need to change that narrative soon. So, thank you.
Great. Okay,
So at this time, I'll ask Paul to present his report on the Parks and Rec fee schedule.
Thank you, Tina, through you, Madam Mayor. Just as a background to the Parks and Recreation rates, they have not increased since 2019, and we felt that it was appropriate to develop a strategy to not fall behind with rate increases. Prior to the pandemic, an annual increase from 1.5 to 2% was the best practice, depending on the cost of living increase for that year. And staff has compared our existing rates to municipal neighbors and have made inquiries to other municipality strategies moving out of the pandemic. Lucan Biddulph has a unique geographic position regarding our fees and can equate this to our proximity of London. To the south and east of Lucan Biddulph, rates are currently 5 to 12% higher, while rates to the west and north are average 12 to 20% lower. Some of our neighbors set percentages increases in a 5-year increment strategy. For example, Middlesex Center is currently coming to the end of a 2% increase period, where they will then review what their percentage increase will be. North Middlesex is currently reviewing their fees. While there may be some increases, they've not indicated a proposed rate as of yet. South Huron is also undergoing review and has not indicated a proposed rate as of yet either. St. Mary's has proposed a 5% increase, while Thames Center has proposed a 6.7% increase to reflect the rising inflation. From a staff perspective, a steep increase to correspond with current inflation, we feel might be difficult for residents to take all at once. And as for this, we feel that it might be appropriate to propose a 3% annual increase over a 5-year period. In analysis of these rates, we took note that South Huron, while they are lower than Lucan Biddulph, this could equate to their proximity to areas such as Hensel and Zurich, which have a lower rate to encourage usage, as they are underutilized facilities compared to Lucan Biddulph, which is actually very successful with our usage. So through this rate, we are not recommending the same increase for our membership and programs at this time. We feel that that's not where the issue may be, whereas the rental rates reflect more to usage of hydro and gas and require more costs. We have also identified fees in the bylaw, which currently did not actually exist on the bylaw, but were fees that existed throughout our programs, such as day camp, pickleball, and active pass. This is more so just a housekeeping strategy to just better clean up our fees bylaw. We've also we're proposing, to introduce new revenue generating items such as a no puck, no stick rate for ice. This is similar to some municipalities will have ice rate dependent towards like figure skating, which is usually a per user fee, but does not necessarily equate in full rental, as you may not be the only person utilizing the ice. We have also identified a potential option for a seniors drop-in hockey. This would be a shinny style that would be similar to how we run pickleball, and it would be in a session format. We feel that these are a good way to increase our revenue throughout the day, where generally the ice sits empty. Obviously, these would be non-prime time only, and only through the winter months. We are also proposing a new per player fee for minor soccer and baseball. This is something that Middlesex Center and North Middlesex have all switched to, and this is to better reflect usage of these particular sports, as they generally more usage of soccer fields, more usage of baseball diamonds equate to more maintenance required. Obviously, it's not the same as an ice rink that needs to be on no matter what. So we feel it's a better way to reflect the required maintenance of these items. Part of the discussion with the user groups regarding these fees is there was a concern on the effect to the introductory beginner level sports such as Timbit and T-ball, as they are quite affordable in our municipality compared to our neighbors. And due to this, we felt that it would be appropriate to offer an alternate fee for that age group, because we also do not want to discourage the young families who are just starting out deciding if they want to continue on into these sports. So the impact to budget is a potential 3% increase to our revenue annually over a 5-year period towards rentals and program.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Comments or clarifications on Paul's fee schedule? Councillor Hodgins.
I just wanted to make one comment on the pool public swim rates. So I see it's going to, it's a $5 tax included rate. I just recall some previous correspondence from a resident hoping that maybe we would consider having the pool available for free and sort of look at providing that service. And I think that's maybe something worth looking at, and looking into our new pool coming online eventually. It might be a good way to just sort of promote that and build momentum around that and make it sort of a hub and place to be. I'm not sure where that project's at right now, but that's a little bit off topic. So just wanted to make that comment. I think that would be something great to look into. And maybe not to you directly, Paul, maybe to Tina. These reports are just being received for information. So just wondering, prior to that, the bylaw coming to council, the next regular meeting, is there still an opportunity for council to provide comments directly to staff, just if we're kind of reviewing this in more detail?
Absolutely, I would say so, yes.
Thank you.
I might just suggest, Councillor Hodgins, with your suggestion about, offering the pool for free or what that might look like, that would be a good opportunity to bring that discussion up at budget time. Any other comments on Paul's schedule? Paul?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we were talking about the pool, I should have made note as well. We removed the separation between adult, youth, and senior, as the adult rate was not utilized at all. So we felt it was more appropriate just to have a single rate for the
One
pool,
rate.
as well as the bronze cross medallion and workbook being removed. That is simply because we cannot guarantee that we have qualified lifeguards in order to instruct those programs. Our hopes are, as we retain more guards over the years and have more qualified, that we can bring that program back.
Perfect, thank you. I guess I just have a question, and that could be just me, and it could be because it's 10 after 9, but just on the fees per player. So if minor ball, before you charge $3,000 for the season for all of minor ball. And so now they'll be charged $19 for each player that's registered, or 5 in the T-ball program.
Correct.
And then the adult season, is that $470, or I guess it's now $492 per team?
That is the price per night per the diamond. So for the season, guaranteeing one night. So for instance, adult baseball team for instance, I can't even think of their names right now, but one team would say, you know, we want Monday nights, that would gain them the season for the nights, allowing for rain dates as well.
Okay, all right. So you charge like the adult leagues per night, per game, essentially.
Essentially, it's a season. It's usually averages at 12 nights throughout the summer. And it's a guaranteed night. It's not for each team because obviously they'll have a visiting team
Right,
playing with
yep,
them.
yep, okay, all right, okay, understood. So any further comment or questions on that? And Councillor Hodgins, you bring out a good point. Just a reminder, so we're not adopting the fees, we're just directing you to bring the bylaw back. But if you see something, there's or if you hear anything, if you have a resident voice something to you, make sure you let staff know between now and, because you're bringing it back the next meeting, right?
Correct. That's the plan unless council wanted more time to review it or.
Okay, so with that in mind, the report or the motion in front of us is, I guess what we'll do is, the first one we'll do is for Paul's report, and that's report PR-10-2022, and we'll receive that for information. So a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Hodgins, Councillor Regan, all in favor? And then from the recommended motion that council receive report number CL-09-2022 for information and direct staff to bring forward a revised fees and charges bylaw for 2023 for adoption at the next regular council meeting. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman,
Just gonna talk to-
Deputy Mayor Manders, and before I call the vote.
Yeah, just, but then Tina, to Jade's point and to your point and to all your points, it's just, Tina can bring that forward to be adopted and then we could amend it, right? Yeah, yeah, so you'll bring that forward as is, and then
Yep.
if through discussion, it can still pass, potentially pass that night, just amend it. All right, okay. Oh,
So the motion was moved by Councillor Westman and seconded by Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. Did you have anything else, Tina?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, the next one is, we've got Arnie Marsman in the house. So I will welcome Arnie up to the podium. He's been waiting so patiently in his, over there in the corner. You won't have any work to do tomorrow. You'll have caught up everything and nobody bugging you for the last 2.5 hours. I'll turn it over to you, Arnie, to deliver your third quarter summary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to council for having me here today, and I'm pleased to present the third quarter building permit activity report to council for information. There are 2 typos in the report. I apologize for that, and I'll point them out as I go through it. They're minor, but they shouldn't be there. So yeah, I apologize for that. So building permit activity across the county for the third quarter has seen a bit of a dip, a bit of a lull, primarily residential. But with regards to Lucan Biddulph, I'm happy to say it's a very good news report in that we saw the exact opposite of that. It's been a very good third quarter, and the year it's been exceptional. The first, I'd like to. So on the first page, last sentence, the fees paid to Middlesex Center, it should say over the first 3 quarters, not over the first half. So for the first 3 quarters of the year, approximately $70,000 was what's been paid to Middlesex Center for building inspection services. Table 1 outlines the building permits that we've seen throughout the third quarter, and then some totals for the year in comparison to previous years. A couple items to have regard for single family dwellings. We have 9 single family dwellings. It may not seem significant, but the 9 is actually very good for the third quarter for Lucan Biddulph. Other municipalities, like, as you know, we service 5 municipalities for building permits, and Lucan Biddulph has done really well with regards to new housing, to keeping the numbers moving. The also of significance is the 2 new apartment buildings. I'll call it at the north end of town here with Z Modular. We're very excited about those. It's they're bringing in themselves approximately 90 dwelling units. So, and those two buildings are going to go very quickly. All eyes to the north of Lucan in January, because they'll be bringing in modular units and they'll be stacking them 4 stories high throughout the month of January. So they're going to go up really quick and we're pretty excited to see it.
Do some like time lapse video
Yeah.
or something when they're putting it together. Yeah.
Absolutely will be that would be time well spent putting
Yeah.
that together. Yeah. Also, we have a new commercial industrial use, the Arbor Spring. We're excited to see that they've got the start there off Fallon Drive. So excited to see them. And in the fourth quarter, we'll be excited to see the Glen Shopping Center. They're not in this report. This report's been very good. A lot of cost of construction has been great, but you'll see in the fourth quarter, it's going to be just as great with the shopping center that's going in. So again, it's been a very good third quarter, but the year it's turning out to be like never before. Sorry, my voice there, but so tables 2 and 3, some more comparative data. Permit fees collected this year, $265,000 brought in permit fees. The number of permits pretty comparable to last year. Table 3 is just a comparator throughout our 5 service municipalities, what's going on. And that's the other error in my report. With Lucan Biddulph, we've had 3 apartments approved this year. And I make note there, it totals 94 units. It actually totals 113 units. So even better. So I think if the mayor or council does reach out to the government, you can say you're doing your part in providing dwellings for Ontarians. Yeah.
Varied product, lots
Yeah.
of different product. Yeah.
Indeed. And just the construction value this year so far at over $50 million in construction value. We've not seen that before at a year end. So it's been a good year again. That's my report to date. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them.
That's great. Thank you very much, Arnie. Yeah, I mean, it is an extremely good news report. So, questions or comments for Arnie on this?
So interesting, when Arnie has a good year, or when Lucan Biddulph has a good year, we see the benefit of that a year, 18 months, 24 months later, when Catherine gets the amended roll showing the new construction. So it's you know, it's going to be interesting to see, because the apartment buildings are rentals, which is a higher tax rate than regular residential, which is the first building here was condo in behind us. So I think all those things mixed together with the industrial, with the commercial, I think, you know, I think we're going to be in a pretty enviable position over the next few years. So
yeah,
absolutely. And thank you very much to Arnie staff, both building and bylaw enforcement. You know, we're, from a staffing standpoint, we're very happy with the service we get. So thank you.
Yep.
Just how's the Ernie, what's the name of that software? How is that proceeding? Like not proceeding, does that evolve any further, or is it when you adopted that was at its fullest?
Yeah, through the mayor. Great question. We were the first in North America to use Cloud Permit. It's spread over to 150 municipalities in Ontario now, and it's spreading across Canada, and it's very actively pushing itself in the States as well. It has evolved a little bit. I'm happy to say that we helped them make it what they are. The Cloud Permit, maybe I can plant the seed here with council. They also have a module for bylaw enforcement, which I'm hoping Middlesex Center will take on in the new year. And they also have a planning module, which Middlesex County Planning is bringing forward. So not only can you use Cloud Permit for applying for building permits, it'll also be for planning applications and bylaw enforcement officers to use and the public to submit complaints for. So we're pretty excited about that as well. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, we don't, during this part of the meeting, we don't allow for public comment. Okay, sorry. But any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Arnie, for all the great news. It's all great to hear. I think about one other thing with this, like building permits is great because it's, you know, we're growing and everything great that comes along with growth. We're collecting development charges. But when I think about we're collecting development charges, it just reminds me that, you know, we have to get our development charges updated to account for the new wastewater treatment plant and all the other big projects that we have coming up. So this is great news, but I just feel like in the back of my mind, like, you know, there maybe just we're losing out on some revenue, not losing out, but I just feel that, you know, that pressure that we should get our development charges updated. And just wondering if I can ask through staff, just so we get an update on that. I think it was on the it's on our business arising from the minutes. So just maybe if we get a quick verbal update on the DCs from staff.
I actually emailed you the update because I forgot to send it to you because after the last meeting, I did request BM Ross to give us an update. And again, they're the same as what the county is. They're trying to digest the impact of Bill 123, which was passed ironically a week ago. And there were some changes in the final reading, which is kind of odd. Usually by the time it gets to the third reading, there's no changes, but they did make some extra changes. So those are having an impact on what happens. But the meat and potatoes of the email from Matt Pearson, our consultant, said we have to get the background study out to the public 60 days prior to council's public meeting and adoption. So we are still, you know, we're first part of December now. It'll likely be February at the earliest, probably more than likely March, because this is going to be a difficult one to it's going to be a big leap. So that's kind of where we are. I was kind of kicking myself because all I could hear was the deputy mayor's voice in my ear going, we should have done this earlier. But the one change they did make at the final reading was they made it retroactive, not to July 1st, to January 1st, 2022. So I just threw up my hands at that point because it didn't really matter. We weren't in a position to be able to update our charges. So, you know, yeah, the sooner we get it, the better. But again, it's if we go too fast and we have to change it again, it really screws things up. So we're trying to do it right and do it as quickly as we can. Correctly.
Great. Thanks very much for the update.
Okay. Any other comments for Arnie while he's here? Thank you very much. Thank you for being patient. And I'll echo what Ron says. We certainly appreciate the relationship that we've got with you and your team. And we look forward to another good year ahead of us. Okay, I just need a mover and a seconder to receive report BD-04-2022 for information. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Question?
I was just gonna comment, are we able to make those, I guess, amendments or changes, just those little typos
As
that Arnie had
amended.
noted?
Yes, I guess I should have said receive it for as amended, receive the report as amended. That's what the motion said, right? Good catch. Thank you. Okay, finance, Catherine. Ethan, thank you. At this point, I'm going to leave the chair because it is the planning report with regards to the Granton Estates, and Deputy Mayor Manders will take the chair.
I am going to pass 12.4A Granton Estates Development Agreement over to Dan.
Through the chair, thanks members of council. So attached to council's agenda tonight is the Granton Estates Development Agreement. And if everyone recalls, this particular proposal is a draft plan of vacant land condominium, which did receive council approval and is currently right now kind of working through the detailed engineering design. And we are at a point now where that engineering design has occurred. The Upper Thames River Conservation Authority has signed off on the stormwater management controls. And we have drafted the agreement with this particular developer. I would note that just for council's recollection, it is a 26 unit vacant land condominium. And that is in the format of single detached dwellings. So not our, typically what we see vacant land condominium more so on townhouses, but this particular one is a single detached dwelling vacant land condominium. There is a private road that leads into the site. Through our detailed discussions with them, the municipality is requiring fencing around the border of the entirety of the property, which is something that we heard was very important from the public. So that has been included as a provision in the development agreement. We've also included provisions for the requirements of upgrades to King Street. In this case, it's the completion of a sidewalk that will lead into the site and then into the development as well on the private side. And then further from that, we also have a requirement through the county to upgrade Granton line, which is the inclusion of turning lanes on Granton line within the existing road allowance. And that's determined to be required as part of the additional population that will reside within Granton as a result of this approval. Other notable things that are included in the agreement is our standard requirements for easements. There is an easement on the back of this site, so that has to maintain and transfer with the municipality through the agreement. And then stormwater management controls are also included, and that has to occur on site to basically what we call pre and post levels. So all the pre-development levels have to be maintained on the post-development side of the equation. We did run into a small hiccup where the design got changed on us. However, it was caught by Spreet and Associates and rectified. So all good news there. So with that said, the municipality, or sorry, I am recommending execution of the Granton Estates Development Agreement, which will allow the developer now to begin the process of actually physically installing services on site to begin the process of development. The one thing I would note on this one, it's a bit of an interesting scenario, is that we have been identified, or it has been identified by our legal counsel, David Woodward, that there is an existing agreement on title with this particular property with the former landowner and the new landowner. This agreement is basically an agreement that allows them to potentially either purchase their unit from the developer who now owns it, or to take possession or retake possession of the property through a transfer of funds initially paid to them. And that is basically set to expire on, I believe it's the end of March 2023, unless an extension is agreed upon. And what that basically says is either if the current landowner does not begin construction by that date and time, the former landowner has the option to purchase it and complete the subdivision themselves. So while it is a bit unique, a unique scenario in this case, it doesn't affect the development agreement at all, because the development agreement is transferable on title regardless of ownership. So if current landowner signs the agreement is still, all the requirements of the agreement are still transferred on to the new owner if should it change hands. So I just wanted to bring that up with council, because that is something that was unique in this case, and that was something that our solicitor did bring up to us. So like I said, I am recommending council execute the agreement. Thanks.
Any questions? Council? Councilor Westman?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you caught me off guard there. The turning lane on Granton line, what's that?
Through the chair to Councilor Westman. So through the initial draft plan review of the subdivision, the county engineer requested that a turning lane be added on Granton line. So a dedicated left-hand lane onto Fallon Drive.
Okay. So if I may, the where would that be located? Like that's right on the corner of Fallon and Grant Line on the southwest corner, I would think.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So for traffic traveling northbound, on the northbound lane, there will be a dedicated left-hand turn lane added at the Grand Line intersection at the southwest, I guess, side, to allow traffic to turn left onto Fallon.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Straightforward. I've got a motion here. I'm gonna proceed to read to move this forward. That if no one cares to speak to bylaws 63-2022 on this first, second, and third reading, that it be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. If I get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Regan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. And we will bring the mayor back. When somebody could, Jeff. Thanks.
I was gonna say. Okay, Public Works. Oh, you still have more? Sorry,
Through the chair.
that was
just-
disrespectful, sorry.
through the chair. You haven't seen me for so long, so I just have so much information to give to you. Yeah, through the chair, just a quick verbal update. So just so council is aware, the final phase, so phase 4B of the Old Clover subdivision has now received final plan approval and sign off from the township. And we are recommending final plan registration through the county. So you will start to see potentially new houses being built on that final phase. So that's just for council's consideration. That's 55 new single detached residential lots that will be added to the market for 2023. And then I would also note, it just kind of sparked on when Arnie gave his presentation. I want to give you, commend you in the fact that you're one of the only local municipalities that has apartment buildings that are under construction at this particular point in time. And by that, I mean you're the only one under their jurisdiction for building permit review. And the only other one that does have an apartment building under construction is Strathroy Caradoc, and it's not as many units as you have approved. So that's pretty amazing for 2022 and everything that you're doing to intensify development within your settlement areas. That's great. To the point where I have other CAOs asking me how are you getting this done there? So good on you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate you sharing that with us. That's great.
Sorry.
Dave?
Sorry, unfortunately, I've got a question for Dan. And it's unfortunate, but I'm gonna ask it in a roundabout way. I don't know if you quite answered it or not. Jane alluded to it. Can you give us just a timeline on now where you think things sit on the adoption of our future residential land? So I think there's the steps, the steps on that, or the steps of the county's official plan they got to take for, like, just quick, if there's any form of a timeline or thoughts on it or input, if someone asked us.
Yeah, so through the chair, I believe referring to the municipal comprehensive review official plan 10 amendment. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is we don't really have any update based on, the last time the question was asked at council. The province, stepped in and froze review of basically every upper tier authorities plan, anticipating changes to the Planning Act and other acts. We've certainly seen those changes since they've frozen that review period. And we're anticipating potential modifications to the county official plan that was passed by county council. That will inherently have impacts on all the local official plans that have subsequently been passed and waiting for adoption through county council. So it's likely that whether the county just modifies those existing local official plans or sends them back to council based on what the changes are that are required. We're still waiting to see, but we have spoken with the ministry. They have assured us that they are reviewing it. We've had recent correspondence with staff at the ministry asking additional questions, so we know that they are looking at it, which is encouraging. But yeah, we're trying as hard as we can, and we are recognizing that there may be aspects of those local official plans that can be adopted prior to the entirety of the plan being adopted. So we're going back and looking at those specific instances. In most cases, that's just policy. It's not going to get you the additions to the settlement areas, but it's at least something.
And when you say the province has frozen it, did you allude that their ministries are still looking at them, or it is frozen right now?
So through the chair, what they did through, if everyone remembers, Bill 108 provided the minister's office with the authority to pause their review of official plan amendments from upper tier authorities. Local councils and upper tier authorities like the county don't have that authority. The minister, that's a unique power that the ministry has. So when we say frozen, we just mean they've paused the clock based on their requirement to respond within 120 days.
Gotcha.
Which they're obviously at this point well past. So they're continuing their review. They've just paused their review clock at this point.
So they have no timeline right now to adhere to.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay, gotcha. No, that got that cleared, made it clear. But
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dan. That's good. Okay, Public Works. Nothing. Parks and Recreation, Paul.
Thank you to you, Madam Mayor. In front of you is a report regarding the multi-purpose courts proposed for the Spencer Park or Old Clover Park. The purpose of this report is to authorize staff to award construction of a multi-purpose court located at the Old Clover subdivision to Tonda Construction Limited. The township applied for grant funding in the ICIP COVID Resilience Fund to support the replacement of the tennis courts that were moved at the Lucan Biddulph Community Memorial Center. To better align this project with the funding opportunity, staff demonstrated a need for better access to outdoor sports activities. Staff proposed a multi-purpose court featuring courts such as tennis, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, with hardscape paved access for accessibility. This project was successfully received funding for $100,000 from towards the project from the ICIP COVID Resiliency Fund. Due to labor shortages, product delays, and supply chain issues experienced across the country, deadlines have been extended to begin no later than September 2023 and must be completed by December 2024. Tenders for this project were issued on 2 separate occasions for design build, and both of which resulted in 0 submissions. After each unsuccessful bid, several companies that expressed interest were consulted to make the next bid more successful and to inquire why bids were not received. Feedback from the potential bidders alluded to a busy market with supply chain issues and product shortages and labor issues. At the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, a solution was presented for the township act as its own general contractor and so source the individual components of this project, citing that we may be more successful in sourcing the individual components. However, there were concerns raised at PRAC regarding liabilities if staff took on the project their own, and a recommendation was received to seek further advice from the ICIP COVID team. At the time, the COVID team did also have concerns with the township acting as their own constructor, and insisted instead that we continue contacting outside contractors for assistance to get this project off the ground and being able to meet the deadlines. During this time, the township had entered into the Community Memorial Center project with Tonda Construction Limited, and at which time Tonda had heard of the issues the township had receiving successful bids. Having had a history of successful projects with the township and having other large projects in the area, Tonda inquired if they could assist and put a proposal together for the township to consider. Given the due date of the project commencement for the purposes of the grant and having attempted twice for bids, staff felt that we had done our due diligence and that it would be appropriate to hear a proposal. But at the same time, we made it clear that at no point would hearing a proposal commit the township to committing to a project with Tonda. Tonda did work with a sports court specialist to create a design that would fulfill the township's desired results. They expanded the layout from a single court to a better shaped court to allow for better functionality, allow more sports to happen at the same time. They also suggested a sports court finish that many municipalities are adopting to, as opposed to the traditional asphalt or concrete sports surface. This surface has a general 15-year limited warranty, which is a huge bonus considering the amount of wear and tear on concrete and asphalt surfaces that require repainting and reline marking. This also has a safety benefit to it as well. We do feel that staff made very good that Tonda made very good attempts to best consider the interests of the township, and considering the budget that the township had set aside for this project, and considering with the market increases, we believe since the budget was set that they did a very good job at trying to keep within reason of increases. Inside this report, you also see some potential areas for cost saving that Tonda has proposed to the township to help offset the increase in the budget from our proposed original budget. They've also opted to, they thought a nice added bonus to the sports court is to add branding to it, which the Tonda would also like to cover the costs and add that into the township as a benefit for the finished product. In the proposed layout, you'll see fencing that's proposed. We've since talked to Tonda and said if we were to go forward with this project, that we would propose alternate fencing to help better achieve playability. As in the original design, they had no fencing where, say, pickleball ended and basketball began, and that obviously would not be ideal for multiple use. Since they would just shift around the proposed fencing to this new layout of fencing, there would be no alternate pricing from what they originally proposed. As an impact to this budget, 100,000 of this project was received from the ICAP COVID resilience team as a form of a grant, and the remainder of the 149,300 would be pulled from development charges that have already been identified for park improvements. The original transfer from development funds was budgeted for 130,000. We feel that this is well within reason of our budget with the slight increase, and we would like to recommend that we award it to Tonda Construction Limited to get this project moving.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Comments, or if anybody needs any clarification, reports or questions on Paul's report. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple comments or a couple things I wanted to ask about. Maybe I'll start with some of the more technical details. Through you to Paul. Paul, is there lighting considered for this for the multi-purpose courts?
At this time, no. When we originally surveyed the public regarding this project, there was a concern that having lighting there would result in late night basketball and pickleball games, resulting in noise complaint issues.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking of it more from like a safety perspective for people using it or going there at night. And I'm not really familiar with the product. I looked at the brochure that was provided for the plastic surface. But just looking at the layout too, I was wondering if there would potentially be an issue like with the tennis court layout. And kind of having the three plastic surfaces kind of, and then I assume the gray is the concrete strips, and just wondering if that's going to potentially make trip hazards within the tennis court, if that was to be used for a tennis court. If there could potentially be uneven surfaces.
Just for clarification through you, Madam Mayor, this would all be that same surface. The different colors just represent the different markings on that surface. So it would just be separate, different colors, but consistent surfacing all the way through.
Okay, thank you. That eliminates that concern. I guess my other concern with this is, how does this proposal from Tonda, how does this work with our procurement policy? Because I'm just wondering, we didn't, the RFPs weren't successful and we didn't do a competitive process here. So it's sort of like a sole source or a single source to Tonda. So I just want to better understand how this relates to our procurement policy, and if we are complying with that policy, or if this would be against our procurement policy.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So our procurement policy, it does speak to single sourcing in the excess of $20,000, which requires council approval, which is part of why we're here tonight discussing this, as well as it talks about due diligence. And we feel that having doing a tender call twice, we have done good due diligence for this, as well as it does speak to purchase negotiation on approval from the CAO if necessary, to if there hasn't been successful bids, or if there's been unequivocal or difficulty deciding on the successful bids.
Through the chair, I just want to make another comment. We've been in contact with the ICIP people as well, just to make sure that, because we understand that this is not the way we'd like to do things. Obviously, we do want to get a competitive price, but we've been through the process twice and we can't get it. The clock's ticking on this project. We got to get it done. So Paul has contacted ICIP, and they're on board with proceeding. So just hopefully that makes you feel a bit better. But yes, this is not the normal. We don't like doing this, but we need to we've got 100,000 grant that the clock is ticking on, that we want to be able to use.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, if I may add to that as well, I think part of the due diligence adding to this, when we set the original budget amount, we had spoken with professionals in the field that work with sports courts, and that's where that initial budget amount had come out to. And after being unsuccessful, some of the people that we had dealt with that had potential tenders were suggesting for the township to get what we wanted, we'd need significantly more. So I think it's a good show that Tonda was able to provide us a proposal fairly close to our original budget. I think that shows that it's a fair market value.
Any other comments or questions on the report? Okay. Then we do have a motion in front of us that report number PR-09-2022 be received, and that council and that Tonda Construction Limited be awarded the multipurpose court project for the amount of $249,300. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. Did you have any verbal updates or anything, Paul?
Nothing major, Madam Mayor, just through you to echo your comments earlier. It was a fantastic event on Friday night, having the alumni game at the arena, and there was many comments from the community how it was fantastic to have an event like that again at our facility. So I'm looking forward to the construction being complete and having even more large community events. And I think having people come in and kind of see some of the progress there's been very good positive comments in the community about it.
Well, for those of you that weren't at the game on Friday night, I think it was an 11th hour decision you made to move the plastic sheeting off of where the heated viewing area will be. So Paul had pulled it all back, which I think gave everybody a real sense of what the bowl is going to look like now. And it really was quite striking. So I think that was a good decision. I know it was a dirty decision. You're covered in dust, but I think it was well worth it because lots of comment about that. So anything economic development? Lisa? Nope, nothing. Okay, then councillor comments. Any councillor comments? No councillor comments tonight? Okay, all right. No changes to budget, no notices of motion. So we'll go right into our motions. The first one is that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph authorize and direct the clerk to purchase $75 gift certificates from local businesses to give to the township employees for Christmas. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that is carried. Motion in front of us that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph appoints Dave Frayne as the Southwest Group representative for the ABCA Source Water Protection Committee. And a mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. That the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph authorize Maggie Smith and Julie Overholt to enroll in Unit 2 of the Municipal Administration Program offered through AMCTO at a cost of $480.25. And I assume that's per student, including HST. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to bylaws, we've got, I think you passed one not long ago. So we've got 3 in front of us. One is the execution of agreement with Quadro. The other one is to adopt the official plan amendment number 11. And then 66-22 is the confirming bylaw. So the motion in front of us is that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 64-2022 through 66-2022 inclusive on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 9:51 p.m. A mover and a seconder for that. I expect all hands to be up. Deputy Mayor or Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor?